Mortal Realms, an Age of Sigmar story phase. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies through the realm that was this episode are...
I'm Davey, and if it meant I didn't have to hear any more intro puns, I'd give my left eye twice.
I'm Aaron, and like Gotrek, I feel exposed without Paul here to guard my left side.
This is Eric, and in my day we slayed beasties, not realms. In this episode, we're discussing Realmslayer by David Guymer. It was only a matter of time before Gotrek burst free from those old world stories straight into the mortal realms. Can these infinite landscapes filled with limitless enemies possibly hope to contain him? Let's find out, shall we?
Let's!
How are you gentlemen doing tonight?
Really great.
Superb.
Really great.
How are you?
Fabulous.
Oh, that's on
raise
par.
I gotta raise your level. All right, let me get in my seat.
Yep,
All right.
Yeah. Doing great.
What's been going on besides listening to a book instead of reading it this time? We all had a little easier, right? We had a little less constraints. So, Davey, how much hobby did you get done?
So actually it was harder for me to listen to this because I was having some technical difficulties, but I got there. I painted up my Thorns of the Briar Queen. I started in on some chosen axes. I'm trying to do like a frost giant theme. So blue skin, white beards, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So playing around. Got some really nice advice from our guy Vint at the Warhammer store. Made some recommendations. I kind of told him what I was shooting for, and he had some advice. So just kind of that cool thing with war bands. You can just try something out. If it works, awesome. Keep going with it. If it doesn't, then fair enough. Got to play a little Warcry. That was lots of fun with this guy right here. Yeah. We had a nice greenskin bash up.
Sure.
That was pretty fun.
I think everybody left happy. And models wise, the orcs wise. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, they got what they came for, which was getting punched in the nose.
Scrap.
/ punching in the nose. And then, obviously, I've been doing some Underworlds playing. Beast Grave Drop, that's a big deal. How about you, Eric? What you been up to?
Well, third episode of Doug's Warcry went out, and it's on this stream. That's the last episode that'll be out. I already said it on that episode. You're hearing it here.
Clarify, last episode on our stream.
On this stream here. So go to the Dogs Warcry on iTunes or find it your favorite podcast player. 3 episodes, pretty good. I've been painting up for our league. So we're about 6 weeks into our league of 8 weeks. So that's been good. My first time running a league.
Yeah, I tell you, because we're joint the same night as Underworlds and Warcry, and my wife started working full time, so I ended up getting there at 5:30 on the later side, and it's awesome. I walk through the door, and it's like standing room only. It's shoulder to shoulder in there. Yeah. It's pretty cool to see that many people all packed in.
I think it's probably only a matter of time before the two sides have to go to war over who gets to claim Thursday nights at the hardware store,
or we figure out like a software app or API that fuses Underworlds and Warcry into one game.
TM.
Multiple tiers. We had about 20 people in there this last evening.
And for a Warhammer store, that's a number of folks.
Don't tell the fire department. Wait, Davey.
Oh, snap. It's right here.
Not my territory. That's good.
I took a break in my Warcry stuff to finish up my Ogre Tyrant for the upcoming Maw Tribes book that's hopefully dropping this fall sometime. And that is a Ogre Tyrant wearing a Tyranid Hive Tyrant carapace as armor. And I finished it up this Monday, and that has been the most successful or liked or far-reaching tweet I've ever done. So that's kind of fun. A lot of people enjoy it, and that's why I do this.
You peaked. You do it for the likes.
You go out on top.
All down.
Honestly, you started that army so long ago. It's not to say that I didn't think there wasn't much more mileage that you could get out of it, like that everything you could have done. But I was amazed that bada bing, you were able to pull out another one out of the magic hat.
Yeah, I always thought it was a little silly when I'd hear about people like I didn't write down my my formula for the paint or whatever. But as I've considered going back to some old stuff, I'm like, oh, that's actually a problem. So I'm impressed that he matched up so well. I think maybe some of its popularities was this very awesome idea to start with. And then it's kind of new again to a bunch of people who may not have seen it the first time around.
Yeah.
I was seeing some of the comments were like, oh, this is cool. Are you going to do a whole army? And you're like, Well, actually.
Yeah, so I've had to point everybody to Mango Miniatures post that he did on the Army when it came out a couple years ago. And I've kind of like, oh, I have to direct him there. So I've been starting some new blog posts on our website to kind of cover the Army.
What website is that?
Themortalrealms.com.
Oh, sure. That's a good reminder.
Funny tie-in. The event you brought it to, and I brought the Bone Splitters to, I busted those guys out for Warcry.
Yeah.
And I did that. Like, I was like, yeah, I haven't seen these guys in a year. I actually did the math. It had been a couple years since I pulled them out. And I was like, putting them on. I'm like, you guys. I remember you guys.
And then maybe you imagined it, but I think one of them winked at you.
Yeah. Indian in the cupboard.
Wink.
Anyway.
Familiar. Oh God, you guys are looking at me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been sitting here this whole time desperate, like, 'cause you have so many fun things to share.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've done much. I did play the Warcry game with Davey, and I did get Beastgrave. So my version of hobby is basically sleeving up all those cards and just hoarding them and snickering to myself in the loneliness of my basement.
The acquisitions phase.
Yeah, I love it. Oh God, that's a good name for a phase. TM. But beyond that, still sort of inching my way through. I did finish, or almost am done putting together some of my squeak hoppers and so on and so forth. Again, just to put them on a shelf. I feel like there's been a lull in buying AOS proper stuff, but I think it's only a matter of time before new releases come out. So I really need to get some progress done on the stuff I already own before I start buying some new.
You took a break
nonsense.
from AOS purchasing while Warcry came out.
Yeah, basically, in my head, those are completely different things.
I like that there was a moment, there was like a morning where you're like, oh man, am I all in on this game? I'm not sure. Guys, I'm really stressing about this. And then like 23 minutes later, you're like, and send a picture of like, I pre-ordered everything.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
I really like that I have you folks to bounce these self-incriminating pictures
help.
off of. Yeah.
Big help.
No one really stepped in to stop me. So thanks.
Well, it's like that thing. It's like, do you get in between the bull and the China shop? No, you step away.
China shop's a lost cause.
Sure.
Write it off.
As soon as they set that China shop up, it was doomed to fail.
Yeah.
Because who still goes to China shops? Anyways. So not a whole bunch, but I like watching everybody else. I like spending a lot of time in our Discord channel, seeing everybody else excited about the things they're working on.
We said no plugging our things within 5 minutes of each other.
Did we say that? I never said that.
That's too soon.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll say this now. www.themortalrealms.com/discord. I'll cut it out later and splice it into a different part of the episode.
It's more work for you.
Yep. Oh, it's no trouble, Davey. It's no trouble at all.
Not for a master editor.
Yeah, that's true. And then maybe I'll talk about it later in the mid-section break. But we're also starting a little tiny new project as well in the same vein as Story Phase. But you'll hear more about that later. But that is about it.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
That's a pretty good hobby, guys. I'm impressed.
Good job.
Yay us.
Shall we move on to the Story Phase?
Yeah, I think we shall.
The story phase. In the story phase, we delve into the stories, characters, creatures, and environments of the 9 realms. The Slayer returns, spat out of the realm of chaos after an eternity of battle. Gotrek Gurnison finds himself in the unfamiliar surroundings of the mortal realms. With no axe, no oaths, and no Felix, he sets out to find his place in this new universe.
Oh man, so good.
All
Cool. Let's start as we always do. Dear listeners, in the spoiler-free section where we talk about just the facts of this, not really a book, but audio drama. And I guess that's a fact right out the gate. So this story, Realmslayer, initially or originally was a audio drama. That's how it was written. We're reading it now because actually the sequel just recently came out, as well as the sort of hardcover script of this story. And actually, I didn't mention it. These two did read it. You guys did. But I did pick up the script and I read it this time around because I listened to it a while back.
Try hard.
Yep. So, well, I don't know if you know this, but David Guymer is a friend of the show, and I feel like we owed it to him to at least do our due diligence. And so that, like Eric alluded to before, is a different way for us to sort of consume these types of stories. I feel like we haven't done. I think the last audio drama you did was the Realmgate Wars, Hunt for Nagash, those stories.
Yep.
Man, that was years ago. But I feel like we were due to do another one. I think a lot of unique and interesting stories can be told through that medium, and I believe that this is one of them. All right, but let's go to our W's. Let's start with the when. When did this story take place? Anybody have any thoughts?
There's some references that we know Hammerhall has been around for 200 years, so we know that the cities have been established for some time. So we're pretty well advanced from the Realmgate Wars. I think it's safe to assume. I mean, we really only have a couple of major events that we always mark, right? Yeah. We mark the opening of the Gates of Azir, the founding of the cities, and the Necroquake are kind of our big thing. So I think we're in what at the time was contemporary, so post Necroquake.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that Nighthaunt completely didn't exist before these stories, but I think the term Nighthaunt is referenced in this book, and that makes me wonder that because of that, if we're post Necroquake as well, it doesn't really play into the story at all.
So it could be before or after.
Yeah. But to your point, I feel like we're getting real close to another major event, right? Like any day now, there's got to be something real big that we can add to our list of. Well, this happens after that. Please give us another one of those events. I guess, I don't know, do we think like the Forbidden Power, like the Stormbolt's being found, is that another event?
That feels like aftermath of the Necroquake.
They are related.
Yeah.
It feels like maybe, getting out of the story. I mean, we got about a 2-year cycle maybe on some of the stuff, so 2020 may be something new with the Light Elves and malaria.
Mini scrying phase. I like it.
Backing off. No guarantees.
No guarantees.
No money on that.
All right. So it's. I feel like a lot of our stories have been set in this time frame, and this is no different. Let's take a peek at the where. So we had sort of mentioned the founding of the cities, and that Hammerhall is 2 centuries old. We bring that up because some part of this story takes place sort of in the area around Hammerhall. I guess we'll go more general. I'll start with it's mostly in Akshi, but though we do find later in the story they maybe jump around just a smidge. But 3/4 of the book take place in that area, in I think the Flamescar Plateau, or at the very least the Great Parch, which is where Hammerhall Aksha exists.
I like that you said that like you're giving directions to the mosque down the road.
Or like a dad who has forgotten that like Google Maps is the thing, and he's like, all right, well, let me tell you how to get there. You're going to pass by this Flamescar Plateau. Keep on going. Don't stop in the Great Parch because you're going to get real thirsty, and you'll find yourself in Hammerhall Aksha.
Thanks, mister. I really appreciate it.
It's the size of a continent.
Can't miss it.
Yep. But that I guess this area of actually, again, informs some of the story. We do spend some time with some fire slayers, and this is sort of their natural habitat. If you want to talk about a fiery personality, I think Gotrek fits perfectly in this area. How do you guys feel the setting, the geographic setting informed the story?
I felt appropriate. Like we spent some time with fire slayers, and it's their sort of native realm, so that kind of ties in well. And it also felt kind of fun because that was the first realm we were really introduced to, and so this is the first realm that Gotrek's getting introduced to.
Yeah, that's a good parallel I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, Hammerhall's the gem of all of the cities, and so kind of we have kind of a promise at the beginning of the book that that's something he's going towards, and so we're in that area. So there's kind of this piece of the old world and this gem of the new world kind of thing is an interesting pairing. But yeah, I think the first thing with Gotrek being a slayer of the old world and the fire slayers being that taken to the nth degree in Age of Sigmar, having that comparison being out of the gate and in actually is kind of a good thing to get out of the way, I guess.
Sure, yeah. There's obvious comparisons, and furthermore, to your point that you're saying about Hammerhall, also if you were going to try and give some connections to this character who comes from the old world, like a city full of races and things that he's used to seeing, probably in his experience in the old world, is a good. Not that it was done, chaos. He wasn't spit out around Hammerhall on purpose, but like it gives him a good sort of intermediate sort of step as an introduction into this new world. It's a exposure to things that he's used to, but in a new setting.
Soft landing.
Yeah, exactly. So I hadn't thought of that either. Cool. Let's maybe talk about the who, because we've thrown around some names. The big name, obviously, is our guy, Gotrek Gurnison, a slayer of the old world. Appears pretty quickly in this story because his name is on the cover, so it ought to. But I would like to say that he's the same old Gotrek that everybody knows and loves. However, I've never read a Gotrek story in my life, so I have no idea if that's true. So fingers crossed that's the case. So, Dave, you know it's coming because you said it earlier. Do you think that holds true from what you've read?
So
by no means are you an expert.
Yeah, I would say I read the first 3, so it'd be Troll Slayer, Skaven Slayer, Demon Slayer. Mm-hmm. There's been many since then. He's leveled up a few times since that happened. So it's hard for me to say whether he feels dead on with where he was when you would have last seen him.
True.
But there's definitely plenty of familiar.
Gotcha.
I think my big question, and I think there's a piece of me that wants to go back and read or explore those to see if he's got, like, dude's got an ego on him or just like an awareness of his level, as Davey said. I'd be curious to see who he was when he first got started before he slayed that first troll. Or
yeah, it would be. I mean, that's a good point. It'd be interesting, even jump back and read that very first one and see where he came from. I mean, same. You can do the same for like Nagash. You can go back and read about Nagash when he was just a
when he was grumpy and whiny.
Yeah, I mean, that's held true.
It's been a through line through his life,
which is a positive, not a negative, by the
way. Thanks. I'm sitting right here. I can hear everything you're saying. Though I reckon so. Guymer has written, I think, a few of the Gotrek stories. So if that's the case, I'd like to imagine that he kept him true to his
he had some of the recipe already.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's kind of taken him those few steps in his mind before he's gotten them here.
Yeah. So I hope he's still sort of true to who he is. But what we do find in this book is, he, like you said, he's got an ego on him. He's more than capable in a fight, and then some. He doesn't suffer fools, whether real or imagined. Kind of an ornery dude, and I think that's why we like him.
This doesn't really feature in the book other than mentioned. Should we talk about where he's been this whole time?
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's a good idea.
And so he explains he's been in the realm of chaos this entire time, of the old world dying, Sigmar floating through the space, Dracothian taking him to the realms, the Pantheon, the Age of Myth, Age of Chaos, and now into the Age of Sigmar.
And 2 centuries into the Age of Sigmar.
and then he's out. And we've had a couple of characters that Gardas has been in the realm of chaos for a little bit, during the Realm Gate Wars.
So a couple times, yeah.
And he's gone in for a quick trip.
Yeah,
just a little vacay or a staycay, as it were.
Sure.
And then, but yeah, so he's just been slaying dudes this whole time.
Awesome. I can't wipe the smile off my face just sort of imagining that. How cool is that?
Another day, another demon.
Right, yeah. Like, to think that Gardas spent like a hot second in there. He's like, all right, we got to shimmy on out of here. Whereas Gotrek reveling in it, like just spending all this time, just goes to show who the real.
He struggles when he doesn't know where to put his axe.
Yeah, it's true. And careful, even if you're his friend, he might rub him the wrong way. But obviously, it wouldn't be much of a story. Well, maybe it would be much of a story if Gotrek was the only character, but we have some new folks that we've never met before, that he is quickly introduced to in this tale. We mentioned the Fire Slayers before, and one of the bigger names, or the folks that we see most often in the story, is Broder. Am I saying that right? You guys listen to it. Broder?
Yep. Try it again.
Broder.
There we go.
So he is a battlesmith, like an apprentice battlesmith, of the Umbach Lodge, which is a Fire Slayer lodge in the like the Salamander Spine region of Akshi, which is actually where a lot of.
Do you take a left there?
Yeah, you got to take the spine. Yep. It's actually a roundabout, so you have to go right first before you can go left. So he. What do we know about battlesmiths? So they're basically rememberers of their lodge. They track stories, and they're at the forefront of their battle line so that they can watch and recount.
Battlesmith in the army is the one that carries the big banner or the totem with the big face on it.
There's actually like 2. Yeah, there's 2 totem guys. It's the one with the face. But how perfect is that? Because, again, I didn't read much of Gotrek and Felix, but if I remember correctly, Felix is sort of a storyteller, poet. I'll use the term rememberer again.
Chronicler.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he swore an oath to record Gotrek's doom.
Doom, yep.
Oath no.
No. So what better type of character to sort of immediately introduce into the story, but someone who sort of can fill that similar role. It's what a coincidence that something like that even exists in the game, that we have a model that does that very thing. How lucky are we?
Very.
What do you guys think of Broder?
I thought he because he seems to be very observant. He doesn't seem to be the most capable of his kind. Like, again, he's an apprentice. He's the youngest in or low on his family tree or kind of thing, that sort of stuff. So he doesn't have a ton going for him in terms of,
other than the fact that Battlesmith is a respected position.
For sure.
Yeah.
And he's got that sweet totem. Like, can't take that away from him.
No.
Like,
well,
rather.
Here's where my flaw were. Like, I thought Broder was Dwarden for brother. And so I thought he was talking to his brother, who was calling him brother. And his brother was kind of looking down on him, or, is the, what is it? The son.
Rune son.
Yeah. So that's where I was. Sorry. That was my.
Anyways, another character that we're introduced pretty quickly in the story is one of Malineth, who I still can't put my finger on, having listened to it and read it now. I understand she's a dark elf, but I still don't know what she is. Like, is she a daughter of Cain, or head nods?
I thought she was a dark elf assassin, which is like the Scourge Runners.
Gotcha.
So I would say less bloodthirsty and more still devious and still
definitely devoted to Cain, aka the god of murder.
Real nice guy. Sure. Yeah.
Order.
Wink, wink, nod, nod. But yeah, so right out of the gate, as soon as we meet her, we realize how sort of sneaky she is, and I think assassin would be a good that fits the role of the assassin. Fairly selfish and vicious, actually. Doesn't lead with many kind words, but she plays heavily into this story as well, and is kind of a fun character to follow as in addition.
And this is the one where I think we talked a little bit about. Well, let's talk about the voices and the audio quality and all that kind of stuff, or the things we like about that in the thing. I think I came to really like her towards the end when she chilled out a little bit. If chill is the right word.
Sure. She's so chill by the end of this book. Cool as a cucumber. All right, so those are the main who's. Obviously, we're introduced to a fair number of other characters throughout the story, but we won't get into those. But are there any other what's we want to talk about? I feel like we haven't really touched on, like, and I guess it sort of develops as the plot of the story, but, like, what's Gotrek doing here? Like, what is the story that we're being told?
I mean, it's the story of him arriving in the mortal realms, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what does it mean if this character who existed in the world that was and has been stuck fighting in the realm of chaos for, time passes different there, so who knows how long it's been for him.
It's actually only been like 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah. Big deal. Whatever. I could do that.
I think it feels a little bit like, so there's been some fun on the Warhammer community site and on the Facebook page in terms of Gotrek and his rules in the game and kind of this, Gotrek versus, each of the chaos demons or greater demons, etc., and he beats them all, etc. So there's a little bit of a Chuck Norris kind of feel, right? He can take on anything. And there's that little bit of like Yankee and King Arthur's Court story arc or type. So it's like a Chuck Norris in King Arthur's Court.
Of course.
Man out of place. Nobody knows who he is. And so we all know something about this guy that nobody else knows. And so it's just that kind of us learning, watching as other people discover who he is.
Sure.
So,
did you know that when Gotrek does a push up, he doesn't actually push himself up? He's pushing the earth down.
The realm, nice. Nice.
I guess the realm. Yeah, that would make more sense.
You want to say it again and edit that in?
No, actually. But did you know that underneath Gotrek's beard is actually just another fist? It's fortunate that he has a beard. It really makes that joke work. Yeah, so that is true. Like he finds himself in the mortal realms, and adventure soon follows. Like he can't help but sort of get himself into trouble almost immediately when he arrives. But it sounds like we're getting into a little bit of a story there. So before we do, let's give a real quick review, initial thoughts for folks who are on the fence. They don't know if they should listen to it. They don't know if they should invest the time. What do you guys think? Do you think they should give it a spin?
So I had always heard about the Gotrek and Felix novels, and everybody remembered them fondly. I didn't learn about them until I think after 8th edition was pretty close to closing or whatever, but I felt like it was something that was to kind of leave in that time. And so it was never something that I sought out. Knowing that he's relevant, knowing that he exists, that he spans that time, there's kind of this piece of it that I really enjoy that kind of reinforces that the old world was a part of things and is still a part of things in some way. And I would say on one level, just it being there and kind of listening through it makes me want to go back and learn more about who he was before so that this has more meaning. As a standalone, it was a lot of fun for me to kind of listen through his experience discovering and interacting with all of these new beings and things that he remembered and has his judgments about, like definitely, Grandpa Gotrek, with his prejudices on things, but it's like 200 years into the Age of Sigmar. Come on, Grandpa.
You can't say that anymore.
But some things never change. It's one of those things where everything's changed, but some things never change. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed it. I felt like, I'm looking forward to reading or listening and reading the next stuff. So, and maybe past stuff. So I thought it did a good job. Substantive. I mean, it's an audio drama doesn't cover as much ground as a book does. So there's, in terms of kind of how much
you should have read the book version of it then, and then you'd been all set.
Yeah, there you go. But I mean, like, a novel, it's 1,000 pages or 500 pages goes more in depth in things, more character development. But I thought there was a good amount here. So, yeah. But I only read a quarter
pages,
of those. Huh? I only read a quarter of the books that we do choose.
1,000 pages. I wouldn't read those books either if I were you. Yeah, David, what'd you think?
So I enjoyed it. I think I won't dwell on this a whole bunch. Your mileage is going to vary a little bit, and I talked about this way back when we covered audio dramas before. What your palette is for some of the audio drama stuff. Like this is, I want to be clear, this is not an audio book, right? Like this is not a somebody reading a novel. There's a performance, and I would say, as far as subtlety goes, they're not so much like chewing the scenery as swallowing it whole. Like it is over the top at times. It'll just be like a routine conversation, like "Let go of my axe," and you're like, "Oh God!"
It's like I'm in an audio drama right now,
and I'm just like,
"More, Davey, more."
We're just hanging out in a bar. Like everybody, cool it for half a second,
guys. What if we did a Mortal Realms audio drama? Anyways, keep going. TM.
Anyhow, so I will say it took me 3 attempts to like really get going on this. Because way back when I just started listening to it, I had to bail. Like it was just too much for me, the initial. And then it took me a couple efforts to get into it this time. But having gotten through and gotten used to, just making my peace with how like over the top it's going to be and just kind of try to enjoy it for what it was, I did end up enjoying it quite a bit. And if you're somebody who's been with the Warhammer universe for a long time, it's fun to have like the little references back. Like it kind of rewards some of that too. So
Malineth was probably, because you had said that and going into it, I was like prepared a little bit. Malineth still caught me off guard at the outset.
Yeah,
just feeling like very over the top witch elf, real just scratchy voice or nails on a chalkboard a bit to start with. But I feel like there's an act there that kind of, that's what I meant by chill out. I felt like later on when she was just speaking plainly, not trying to cut people with her words.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit different when she was cutting with knives.
Oh gosh, I prefer my people getting cut with knives. Yeah. Thank you very much. No, I think I echo a lot of what Eric said. In that I did enjoy it, and I did find myself wanting to know more. It's rare that I like jump into the middle of character. I feel like I'm one for like series, and I like to start things at the beginning. But I haven't read a single Gotrek and Felix story leading up to this, and so for a while there, I felt a little left out. Not that it was detracted from the story, but like there's all sorts of fun references that I could tell were, fun, and nods and winks. And man, I love getting nodded and winked at.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there we go. Thank you guys. I loved it. And so it does a good job to like make you want to be in, or it does a good job of convincing you that you want to be in on the fun. And by the end of the book, I feel like audio drama. I feel like I kind of was actually after, it's sort of broken up into 4 sections. And by the end of it, I did feel like I was part of sort of this story, even though again I just sort of jumped in the middle, so that was pretty cool. One of the things I liked about it is that Gotrek kind of serves as maybe like a stand-in for some folks, some of the holdouts from the 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy World, in that he's sort of approaching this new world with his preconceived notions about the way things are supposed to be, and like in the same way that a lot of the Warhammer Fantasy fans were like looking at the Age of Sigmar. Now this came out I think it came out in 2018 versus the 2015 when the edition shifted, but like if it would have come out even sooner, I feel like people maybe would have identified more with this character and would be able to like sort of go on the same journey that he did when facing these mortal realms in the Age of Sigmar that we have on our hands now. But anyways, because of that, I felt sort of a kindred spirit as well. Not that I was sort of anti-Sigmar.
There's an instant familiarity with him, or like feeling like he's just been around.
Yeah.
And it feels like even though I haven't read those stories, the name's been there. There's a clout to it, a brand to it. So
well, and he drops names that I'm familiar with, or he'll make references to like faint stories from the old world that I know as well. So you do feel a certain like camaraderie with him, and because of that, I think it makes a particularly enjoyable story. There's almost a similarity in that fact, like there's that sort of nod and a wink to the reader that is very similar to my mind as the Hamilcar type of stuff. That he's very like on the reader's side, which is sort of coincidental. That also written by David Guymer. I think he does a really good job of like bringing you in and sort of linking you up with the main character, and you do feel that kinship, I guess, which is pretty cool. So because of that, I do recommend it. Even if you haven't read any of the Gotrek stories, I will advocate that. Yeah, no, I felt included by the end of the story. It's pretty neat.
It does feel like too that there's already more of this. Mm-hmm. If there's another like a series to get on board with, this seems like a good bet, and starting with this first one is a good kind of intro.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. So that covers our spoiler-free section. You guys have any other thoughts before we start spoiling the Dickens?
Oh, can't wait to spoil it.
Let's spoil it. Spoil it rotten. 1, 2, 3. The spoiler phase. Hi everybody, it's Aaron, still the worst member of the Mortal Realms. And look, let's not mince words. Let's cut to the chase like Gotrek would. I need a couple things from you. First, if you haven't listened to or read Realmslayer yet, and our golden review makes you want to, then just go get it. The links are in the show notes. We make it super easy. And if you have already read it or listened to it or hammered it rune-like into your skin, then go to Amazon or Goodreads or whatever other newfangled rememberer tool you use to give it a rating. Because I'm told these stats, these numbers, this feedback helps authors. And what's good for authors is good for you. And me. And authors again. And hey, look, while you're in the reflecting mood, how about you give us at the Mortal Realms a heads up when you finish and let us know what you thought too. We got a billion ways to get in touch. Check them out. We want to hear from you. And finally, Davey and I made a new thing. Well, it's kind of new. Anyways, we invented a new phase, and it's a short story phase called Pocket Realms. You see, reading is hard for some people, like me, and reading a novel or battle tome or whatever once a month is especially so. But we also know that you want more Mortal Realms. So through endless ingenuity and boundless creativity, we two geniuses decided to tack on an additional bonus show once a month where we story phase the heck out of AOS short stories. Same great taste, but way less filling. There is a catch, though, in that we are going to initially release them on the Patreon feed for our free guild members. But don't worry, it's fine, because after a few months of shows, we're then going to bundle all the recent Pocket Realms up together and drop them on our main feed. So don't fret. You will not miss out on this very experimental, untested product devoid of everything you like about the full story phase. Aaron, don't read that last part. Wait. Anyways, if you want to be on the cutting edge of Mortal Realms content, and who doesn't, head over to patreon.com/themortalrealms and become a patron today to start getting your grubby little mitts on the new show. There's at least one there now, Heart of the Fallen by Sarah Cockwell. We released it earlier this month. It's waiting just for you. It's very good. Well, the story, that is. All right, so that should do it for me. Expect to hear more Story Phase around November 4th, or a few days earlier if you're a patron, and more Pocket Realms on the Patreon feed around October 28th. It might be a spooky one, I don't know. Get ready. All right, let's get back at it. Cool, let's talk about spoilers. Everybody dies. No, not true. So I think I said that this story is broken up into sort of like 4 sections. And the first one sets the scene where we're amongst fire slayers who are preparing for battle at the gates or at the bridge of their lodge. And this bridge, of course, is over lava. I said fire slayer, so of course it's over lava.
Floor is lava.
Yep, floor is lava. And everybody's standing on cushions. And so there's a lot of yelling back and forth and a lot of bravado, a lot of war cries. They're preparing for this enemy that's going to be rolling up. I don't know if they ever actually say who they expect to appear. Presumably some forces of chaos, but it doesn't matter because chaos forces are not who shows up. But bada bing, bada boom, it's our guy Gotrek right out of the bat. He kind of comes stumbling out of the steam and smoke that is sort of clouding this hold or lodge. Were you guys expecting to see Gotrek that soon? I feel like we were dropped right into it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like I was like, oh my gosh, it's Gotrek already.
Oh God, Gotrek too.
All right, here he is.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting about it is that because we build up who Gotrek is, that the first time we see him, he's just kind of strolling in. He kind of just appears in the smoke and stumbles in.
Yeah, that's more what I meant. Like
catches people off
suddenly,
rather than like a big fire slayer flying into battle and being kind of like the first scene is he's chopping somebody's head off or something like that.
Or he comes rocketing comet from the sky and plummets.
That would have been cool.
Man, missed opportunity.
Superhero stance down on the ground in a crater, but it's just unassuming, right? And there's no display of power. There's no evidence of who he is. And so these fire slayers are preparing for battle and some strangers just appearing in their lodge and looks familiar, has the mohawk. I'm like, yeah, we get mohawks. We like the cut of your jib right there.
That mohawk tracks.
But it's weird. Like they definitely talk about like, this guy looks weird. And I was like, like that weird. Like he's pretty close to you, but
but yeah, I mean, it's like, but they make note like he's got no runes.
Where's his runes?
And so they kind of make a lot of judgments about who he must be or what the quality of this guy based on the fact that he's not like them. So all the things that they judge as being powerful or strong or great, he has very few of those things other than being a dwarven with a mohawk.
I was just going to say, though, not to beat a dead horse, but like the closest thing to them that exists in the world and yet not like them. Yeah.
Well, that might be something to say about how like insular Dwarden are typically, but then the fire slayers are so caught up in their identity that like you can't go part way.
Maybe it's the uncanny valley for him. Like so close, like not quite there.
Is this dude making fun of us? Like,
unsettling. Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm a fire slayer.
It's like an insensitive Halloween costume.
Hey bro, der.
Am I saying that right? It's true. So he comes rolling up though. So these fire slayers are all geared up for a fight, and I think tensions are high. And by no means does Gotrek smooth things over by a polite introduction. And it comes to blows pretty quickly, and by blows, I think specifically Gotrek bites a nose off, right? Oh. There's like a blow in the nose. There's a joke in there somewhere.
Got a booger in my mouth.
Yep. But as you can imagine, I bite not just any nose, but I think he bites one of the Rune Sun's nose off. And that's good enough to get him thrown in jail, but not easily, I should point out. They were preparing for like a battle, and it's almost as if a battle is what they got, because it took many fire slayers to subdue our boy and lock him up in the dungeon in the lodge.
And that's where we meet our other friend,
Melaneth. Is that how she sounds? I can't remember.
It's like a a Disney witch.
If Disney witches, cut people's
Slayer! Super exaggerated, but it definitely breaks up. I mean, if you've got a lot of dwarfs talking in a Gaelic or a Scottish
brogue,
they're doing a lot of northern UK. I think if we had Paul on here, he'd be able to place it for us. It sounded like northern England.
He'd probably accidentally slip into it too, and we wouldn't be able to break him of the accent all night.
And so she kind of cuts through that. She's definitely a different person character in this.
Sure.
Maybe, I mean, she's female, so that's different for, some Fire Slayer, how they're represented. But
there's probably girl Fire Slayers.
I mean, there are. Just, they didn't show up in this.
Interesting.
And she's in the jail too. And this is where we get kind of so Gotrek talks a little bit about them looking like Slayers, I think, and them being Dwarden and being confused at what kind of Dwarden they are. He doesn't recognize them either, or he doesn't place any value on the things that they place value on. And then it's a dark elf. Uses the old world, terminology. He certainly doesn't say elf.
Oh God, no! Can you even imagine?
Can you imagine him using
his lips?
The PC terms?
Yeah.
And just instantly is backstabber, liar, cheat. You can't believe a single word that comes out of her mouth, and just instantly is done with her. But she just chides him and plays with it. So she's not fazed by it too much. Again, she doesn't know who he is. Nobody knows who he is. And just kind of cackles and feigns kind of her, they caught her out and can't believe they caught her, that these Dwarden here would even be able to catch an elf like her. And now she's stuck in this place. Then there's
the sounds of fighting, and I think is what happens next. So it interrupts their back and forth, their venomous words towards each other. And Melaneth recognizes this as an opportunity. She says, "Hey, they're distracted. Let's see if we can get out of here." As you alluded to, Gotrek has no interest in doing anything with an elf.
Well, let me say the first thing that we learn about Gotrek is that the dude has a limitless supply of shade to throw at everybody else. No matter. Go ahead.
He's convinced. Actually, he's pretty sure he's still in the realm of chaos.
Yeah, true.
So he keeps on talking about hey, these weird demon dwarves here,
kind of
fire slayers.
Speaks off to the people behind the one-way mirror or something like that, or the two-way.
Right.
And just that there's out there. If you think I'm going to be fooled by this, I'm not.
Yeah.
So there's that. He's speaking to the narrator kind of thing. That's pretty funny. But then he's just he's been in chaos in the realm of chaos this whole time. It's not phased him, so he's not being phased. He's you're not going to fool me with this.
And he doesn't see the need to escape. It's almost as if he just assumes he can escape whenever he wants to. He doesn't need a reason to leave.
Well, so there's the fighting breaks out, and we've got Skaven.
Yeah,
right.
There's always Skaven,
and they've come through gnaw holes. They've come through some weird places. They've compromised the structural integrity of the lodge, and
a bunch of voice actors just really going for it,
leaving it all on the table. Yeah,
and I think lava starts pouring everywhere.
They've got drills and they're drilling
liquid
up hot
magma.
Yeah.
So the nice lava river that was under the nice bridge is now overflowing and getting a little crazy, and stuff's pouring from the ceiling. And
indoor lava swimming pool.
Yeah.
So we should all be so lucky.
And Melaneth takes the opportunity to try and break out. She's they're alone. The guards are gone. She's I'm gonna get out of here. You coming with me? And he's again, thinking that this is chaos playing a trick. I'm not gonna follow you where you want me to follow.
Yeah.
So he just stays put.
Mm-hmm.
And so she kind of gets out of there.
She boogies out. But it's soon thereafter, I think, that Broder, our guy from before, the battlesmith, who, I guess we didn't really talk about at the time, seemed to sense something in this Gotrek. He thought he was more important than everybody else was maybe letting on. I don't know if it's at this point or eventually. I think he even alludes to it, that he starts to get the hint that maybe this guy's more divine than what we're giving him credit for, and he might even be some avatar, or maybe the actual visage of Grimnir, our our god.
Doesn't he like see Gotrek's face, and he's like, it looks a little bit like the face on my staff, or something to that effect. He's, how many Dwarden it took to kind of get him into the jail.
But because of this, Broder has some interest on Gotrek, and he heads down to the jail to check on him.
I think he wants to let him out.
And he does. So.
And to help him fight the Skaven, etc. And I think even like the Rune Son is like, we'd rather. It would be wrong to have a Dwarden die in a cage than fighting with an axe.
Yeah.
So even there's some respect just to...
Rune Son does not seem to take it super personally that his nose got bit off by this guy.
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
It'll grow back.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I kind of
Cool
expected that Rune Son to be like, oh, here's like the haha, he's too proud and the whipping boy, and he's just going to, like, his embarrassments will be our entertainment. But he wasn't necessarily like, he got to have some cool moments.
Took it on the nose.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Bit his nose off to spite his face.
So they get him, but the door's wide open and he's sitting there. And he's like, why didn't you escape? He's like, I'm not falling for it.
Nice try.
Nice try, chaos.
Yeah.
So they get him out, and he grabs an axe.
I think he brings him an axe, like he arms him, and they head into the fray.
Gotcha.
But
big chaotic fight.
Yeah, exactly. I think they end up sort of getting separated. The tides of the battle, like, move the Dwarden in different directions, and it seems like this ambush or the attack by the Skaven was so surprising that the Dwarden are maybe a little on the back foot, at least from the scene that we're the perspective that we have on. But it's around this time that, like, Forn, which is that Rune Son who had his nose cut off, comes rolling up on his Magmadroth, who has a sweet name, Yellow Scale, I think. Yeah. Forn's Magmadroth.
Nice
he comes in to sort of save the day or save the moment at the very least, and rescues Broder.
We learned that Yellow Scale, if a Magmadroth has scales that are yellow, they're super sweet because yellow is the color of gold.
Yeah.
So.
A bling. No, I was going to jump in on that same thing. They seem to be like super aggressive and the best of the best.
The best of the best. He's like the youngest of many Rune Sons, and he has to prove himself. And because of that, I feel like gives him a certain edge.
What you compensating for?
Yeah, geez, Louise. But yeah, so the Forn joins the fray and sort of starts to lead his Fire Slayers into battle.
Gotrek and Malineth end up having an encounter in the chamber where the Anvil of Power is.
Yeah. The Master Rune.
Yeah.
So we find out that that's just been struck.
Yep. Which makes you wonder if it somehow coincides with Gotrek arriving.
I didn't put that together, but something to where, like, there is a Master Runesmith who's been working in the forge, strikes this rune, and you're saying that there's a connection to that bringing Gotrek maybe to this place.
I thought that was not explicit, but I thought it was
left
as a possibility.
Especially because Gotrek has such the connection to Grimnir, and this is maybe one of the biggest, like, pieces of Grimnir, or one of the most powerful or whatever. So that's pretty cool. What do they do?
Well, Malineth kind of has a little bit of a sort of villainous monologue where she's like,
of course she does.
She's like, oh man, it was so hard to, like, get these guys to think they could capture me and then actually do it. Like, I really had to, like, slow roll my super sweet abilities so that they could do this.
I had to take it all to half speed.
Yeah. And so she's clearly going to steal it. And Gotrek mostly just doesn't want to let an elf do what an elf wants to do. So this is a moment where some of the voice acting, like, so there's one point where, like, these traps activate and she's doing some, like, Indiana Jones / Nick Cage, National Treasure, like, diving, flipping through. She has, like, superhero landing, and then she gets knocked out by Gotrek. But the whole time she's doing these flips, like, you can hear Brian Blessed, he's, like, laughing in the background. I thought it was Skaven because he was so unhinged. Like, I was like, what? This is wild cackling in the background here. And then I finally figured out, oh, it's Gotrek. Weird. Okay.
Was it like a battle lust type of thing where he's just giddy with battle? Or?
He wasn't even fighting. He was just like, haha, you're going to get pwned.
Oh, so he's like watching traps go off and thinking she's going to get...
Yes. I don't know. Like, he was helping direct some of them. Anyway.
I like to envision that. I'd like to imagine what it would sound like for Brian Blessed to say pwned. Guymer, if you listen to this, you have license to write whatever you want in the next script. Make him say all sorts of wacky stuff.
He would figure out how to have a very extended rolled R in there, even though there is no R in front. Yeah.
Maybe he was watching Malineth do like American Ninja Warrior,
sure,
and or one of those ones where you do the thing and then you smash into the foam wall and fall into the water. And he was hoping for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh gosh, he's a big fan of it.
But he
did she get it?
KOs. No, she does not get it. He KOs Malineth, drags her outside, drops her, says, "Hey, y'all should guard her." At this point, they realize he's carrying not the axe that he was given by the battlesmith. He's carrying
So out of the vault or that space, he grabs it.
Yep. It is like the
Zangram Thaz.
Zangram Thaz.
Look at the Thaz on that.
Oh gosh.
Sorry.
Thunder Thaz.
Probably Gotrek, probably, yeah.
And they're all super wowed. They're like, oh my gosh, like only the biggest Grimwrath berserkers, like only the most deeply in guys can carry that when they have like 20 rooms or more, and you've got none. How is this possible? And this is kind of another moment where Brodor is like, hey, like, yeah, there's something going on here. Like this guy's got some innate connection to Grimnir if he can pick up this axe without just like melting him into mush.
And the Rune Son is kind of like, is that really that axe? He can't. He doesn't have any runes in. How could he be carrying it?
It's a tricky trick.
And Gotrek's throwing shade. He's like, you. This doesn't even have part of Grimnir in it. Like he's kind of throwing shade about like you should take it back. It wasn't. Like,
well, you have these cool moments where he's like, like my old axe was better, and they're like, what? That's impossible. Like this is one of the coolest axes that ever was.
Well, he's like, yeah, this axe was forged by mortal dwarven hands. My axe was made by Grimnir himself.
Yeah,
like,
and that was I remember the rules back in Warhammer Fantasy where you looked at so it's supposed to be the High King of the Dwarves had one of the two axes of Grimnir. And then it didn't necessarily explicitly say it, but then you looked at Gotrek's rules, and the rules on his axe were almost a perfect match / mirror for the one on the High King.
That's cool.
Oh, I think he's got one of the axes of Grimnir. So yeah,
that's neat.
Anyway, nice.
I mean, just as an aside, like anybody else bummed out that Grimnir isn't around, like in any of the stories, man, I would love to like hang out with him. He seems cool as hell.
You're getting pretty close to Gotrek,
I suppose. Yeah.
Cool. So they and then they realize that something else is happening. The Skaven haven't totally left.
The Skaven somehow steal the Master Rune.
Right. So they're like, hey, after they have a little chat about, hey, you're a super cool guy for being able to hold this axe. Anyway, what's going on? He's like, the elf was trying to steal the Master Rune. I said, what elf? And then it turns out she scampered away, and they go back in the vault, and the Master Rune's gone.
Yeah.
So Malineth gets away, and the Master Rune gets stolen, but presumably by Skaven.
But not the same event. And so I think it's at this point that they are now on the hunt. They being the Fire Slayers and Gotrek are now chasing down the Skaven who are now running away and sort of fleeing the hold as they're trying to figure out how they can get the Master Rune back. But while they're doing so, they sort of burst out of the front door of the lodges, and they're running across the bridge over the Calder, as they call the lava river. Anyways, but while doing so, they are attacked by this eruption, this voluminous god beast creature, known as, he's got a name.
Ignimbrus.
Yeah, you got it, Ignimbrus.
And so the Skaven activities sort of awaken this realm beast or god beast.
Well, so it is the first son of Volcatrix.
Right.
The god beast that Grimnir died in mutually assured destruction took down. And this lodge is like their founding mythos is that they drove this first son of Volcatrix back. Like they're powerful enough that they drove it back into the earth. And oh crap, it's back.
It's not powerful enough to keep it there, apparently. And so the Fire Slayers are sort of trembling, like what are we going to do? We got to prepare ourselves to sort of beat this beast back. But then who should roll up just to stroll, just a sauntering in? But Gotrek,
Shade Master Gurnison.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he just gives him the old like mean mug, like stares him down.
Yeah, he just walks up to him, growls at him a bit, tells him that he ain't nothing that he ain't faced before.
Sure.
And Ignimbrus, there again, Broder's kind of watching this, and they're all talking like, "What are you doing?" Like all the other fire slayers are like, "What are you doing? You're going to get murdered." Gurnason's like, "I've fought this and I fought this and I've killed that and killed that." And it's as if Ignimbrus recognizes him.
Yeah, game recognized game.
And
I was holding on to that one for so long.
and Ignimbrus just retreats back into the earth. He's like, I'm out. I don't have time for this.
I don't know if he retreats. He's just like, I just remembered I got to go do something.
So I left the stove on.
It's Wednesday? It's
Wednesday?
Oh, man.
I didn't know it was Wednesday.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just faces him down. He's recognized in some way, or the presence that Gotrek has just intimidates this first son of what's his name? Volcatrix. And he gets out.
Slayer's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't get wiped out." And Gotrek's like, "Oh, lame. I was hoping to fight."
Yeah, there's just there's a level difference between him and everyone else, and we know it right away. We get that piece right away. I'm disappointed though that he doesn't fight very much in this first part. Like, you want to see this legendary Slayer slay something legendarily.
It's the anticipation. That's how he gets you to read more, right? It's like, you have to give you just little bits here and there.
All right, well, it's going to get bigger than that guy, right?
Yeah, I sure hope so. But so it's at this point that like Gotrek, I feel like, is starting to get a feel for like the world he's in, or he realizes that maybe I'm not in the realm of chaos anymore, and I'm in this other new place that I need to learn about.
Yep.
And he gets to chatting with some of the other fire slayers, and it occurs to him, like, I don't know how the idea is introduced to him that like he starts to wonder like what maybe happened to Felix, my dude.
So he's looking at the sky, and he sees these lightning strikes.
Oh yeah, that's what it is.
But he sees the Stormcast, the men in the lightning. So his eyesight is fast enough, or his one good eye.
He's got two right now.
Or does he get two right now? Okay, yeah. So he can see the lightning men in those streaks of lightning. And he's like, well, who was that? Or what was that? And they tell him about the Stormcast. And he's kind of trying to put two and two together. And he's like, well, if I made it here, then Felix probably made it here. And if Felix was, if he died or anything like that, then Sigmar, if anyone was going to be remade as a Stormcast, it's Felix.
Yeah, to Gotrek's mind, like he was the best of the best. Like he
there was no more worthy human hero.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if that's what Sigmar is doing, if he's taking human heroes and turning them into the Lightning Men, that's where Felix is. And they talk to him about, well, Hammerhall is close, and that's the shining example of Sigmar's presence in the realms. Mm-hmm. And so he asks for help. Not really.
In so much as I think he says, who here knows the way to Hammerhall?
Who's taking me?
Yeah.
I can't get the Uber.
I don't get any bars down here.
And so he enlists Broder volunteers to take him, because again, he's putting more together. He feels like Grimnir's in him. Mm-hmm. And that he's called to kind of join him on this quest. So the Rememberer swears an oath to take him to Hammerhall.
Yeah.
And in return, that there's a mutually beneficial path to find the Master Rune as well. And so, does Gotrek swear an oath to find that? He doesn't quite swear the oath to help him find the rune, I think.
I think he does an oath until he doesn't get up to his oaths until like I think later in the story.
Right.
Yeah. And that's
so they set off.
Yeah, that's the end of part 1. We are a quarter the way through the story. Y'all still with us? Good. All right, cool. Let's cut to part 2. We're dropped into a scene.
We're going to the next part.
We're
so much red.
Oh, is it? Oh, well, that'll be fun. We're going to the next part. We're dropped into a fight scene. Thank goodness. I need more of that, like the dramatic clashing of iron and the battle cries. David's giving me a sweet look. No. And
Linking a nod.
It's a fight between I guess some like human forces, an Izomo Jordain and his mentor Loba, and they're fighting a bunch of like Arcanites, I think, or cultists of chaos. Just conversation back and forth. It seems like they've been ambushed or they've been attacked on the road while they were traveling. Jordane's mentor Loba, like he gets cut down, like saving Jordan, who you get a sense is a little green. Like he maybe knows his way around a sword, but he's not necessarily the most experienced out here in the fight. Like you get sort of his inner monologue or outer monologue because it's an audio drama and you have to hear him say it.
Yeah.
So they're fighting on the Great Ash Road, so it puts them, in Akshi as well. It turns out that Jordane's forces are sort of overwhelmed by these chaos forces, and he's sort of getting, cornered by 3 enemies or something, and they're encroaching on him. But who comes in to save the day? But again, our boy Gotrek, he's saving days left and right. I love him. And he's sort of followed by a retinue of fire slayers who have followed him into this fight, and they they handily defeat the chaos forces who are threatening Jordane.
Drive them off, right?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, they don't wipe them out. But,
yeah. And Jordane is a sole survivor of his.
Yeah, poor guy.
5,000,
or lucky guy, I guess. But
yeah,
it depends how you look at it. Which is fortunate because it turns out he's like the crown prince of this kingdom, or this at least city, which is sort of a vassal, I guess, to Hammerhall Aksha. So it turns out we're sort of we're on the road to Hammerhall, and these forces were marching in that direction when they were attacked by the Arcanites. And like I said, Jordane was sort of leading them as their crown prince, but it turns out he's not leading anybody anymore, because they all dead, and it's just him now.
There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of need to live up to that or avenge that. And so in that, they need to they know this force is here, and so there's a desire to go and warn. I think the next city, kind of that this is coming, or that we've got to let somebody know that they're here in this space. Yeah,
and so Jordane saved. He realizes that the dwarves are all heading. Duarden are all heading to Hammerhall. He's like, all right, well, I need to head that direction as well again, because we're trying to head off
follow the yellow brick road.
Yeah, one of the chaos forces. So they hop. I think they have a wagon, and he hops in, and they head off in that direction.
Do you know what you do when you take the ash road to Hammerhall?
I can't wait to find out.
You haul ash.
Where does it come from?
Deep down inside.
Yeah, they have to. Like, what can't you do because you do that? Like,
I'm so powerful.
What have you sacrificed?
I can't keep a schedule to save my life.
Well, you're lucky. You got me. All right.
You got a friend.
You're welcome. All right. So they ride in their little cart, and they head to Twinfire Keep, which is like a keep that's on the way to Hammerhall, Aksha. But they are, I guess, rebuffed in a sense, in that like the guards up on the wall fart in their general direction, and something smelled like elderberries. But they say no, you can't come in. There's rumors of forces of chaos on the road. Jordane's like, hey, no, I'm the Prince of Edessa. You gotta let me in. And the guys on the wall is like, I don't think so. The Prince of Edessa just rolled up, a bit ago, and we let him through. That ain't you, friend. And so they're sort of at an impasse where they think that, like, all right, well, you guys are chaos imposters. It's like, no, it's me. Well, who are we going to believe? The thousands of troops that just came marching through here? Just one dude riding with some fire slayers.
Because Jordane's like, they're infiltrators. And he's like, who's going to be infiltrators? 5,000 infiltrators, or like 5?
Yeah, exactly. But somehow, like, the fire slayers are able to like speak on his behalf and convince the guards to let him in.
Yeah, Brodur specifically says, I'm going to prove it, and here I'm offering you Urgold.
That's what it is.
And they're like, whoa, it's legit. Slayer willing to give up Urgold?
And they don't even take it. They're like, no, just the fact that you offered it. And I'm like, come on, guys, really, man, just take it.
Wow. Some really principled guys in this game.
Sure.
But then it's no longer her gold, it's my gold.
No, I love it. And so they are let into the keep. But unfortunately, they're not let out of the keep.
Right. They kind of lock it down. And, Grim or Gotrek's like, whatever, like, nothing keeps me in. It's not like, we'll figure something out. And they make plans to meet with somebody find a way out, or they're talking to somebody. How do we get out of here?
Well, it's. I think the scene cuts and they're commiserating in a bar. They're like, "Oh, I can't believe we're locked in this keep. We got to keep going. We got places to be. Like, what are we gonna do?" And Gotrek's like just down and bruised, like left and right, complaining about it the whole time.
So he had gotten ale from the Fireslayer Lodge, but they like it hot.
Some like it hot.
Some like it hot. But it's still even like it's hot that he doesn't like ale isn't served hot where he comes from.
Yeah.
And then this ale isn't strong in any way. There's and it's not good.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because he's like, "Ugh, this is so warm," and the Fireslayer's like, "Ugh, this isn't even nearly boiling." Like what? So it's the can't please anyone middle ground.
I'd be pleased. I'd be all right. But Gotrek's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, but don't even worry about it. They mentioned that there's some dude here who'd totally be able to get us out of here."
Yeah, he talked to the bartender or something like that. The bartender told him to wait for a dude, a necromancer.
Yeah. Well, he didn't tell him a necromancer because Gotrek would not have been interested if he knew it was a necromancer.
Yeah, that's right.
Another
a wizard.
Yeah, predisposition against necromancers. But this contact rolls up. Turns out he is a necromancer. Gotrek's pretty upset at your Dracula sound.
Blah.
Blah. Gotrek flies off the handle. Is pretty upset that their contract is supposed to be this necromancer. Obviously, he has no love towards necromancy. But it turns out
he doesn't fancy it.
Not fancy for that necromancy. But it turns like as far as they can tell that this necromancer knows the only way out of out of the keep, or the way to get them into Hammer Hall, and so he has to swallow his pride, I guess, or swallow his convictions, and join forces with this necromancer, who is then willing to lead them on this expedition. And so they do that, and they make it, and then everyone is happy. So they are able to get out of the keep, and we fast forward a little bit, and the party's now traveling through this charwood, which is this like burnt out like ash forest. And they're all actually, what are the chances? That seems out of place.
It's funny because ash is actually a type of tree.
Well, oh, geez, I didn't even think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if in the mortal realms all ash trees are actually like burned like trees.
Yeah, there's a lot of literal construction.
They're real literal. So they're navigating the charwood. They're talking about matters that I'm sure are very important, but in the middle of their conversation, they're attacked by a bunch of burnt out like Sylvaneth. Oh, goodness. That's the last thing you want.
Just total burnouts.
Total burnouts.
Yeah.
They're never going to make anything of themselves.
Yeah, so they just, and it's very feral. These Sylvaneth are very just brutal and angry, and
they repeat like at their prey. They call them unburned all the time. Right? Unburned. You're unburned. Oh God.
We'll fix that.
Sure. We'll fix that. Can I play too?
Come, my pretties.
That's a different witch.
Sure. Tell me about these Sylvaneth in this fight.
So they are trying to fight their way through. It's kind of tough. They're making it happen. They're trying to fight their way through. It's challenging, and then the remaining red shirts that are not wearing shirts, like the 9 Slayers that came along.
The red hairs, maybe?
Yeah. These are the only ones, and I remember Broder makes the comment, he's like, I can't believe, like, this Gotrek's divinity is so clear to me. I can't believe only 9 of my, kin recognize the same thing. Anyway, so they volunteer to try to hold off the Sylvaneth, occupy them, and let Gotrek and Broder and the rest, like our main characters, basically push on towards the
gate. Named characters.
Yeah. Jourdain is with them too still. So they split off. They get attacked by another force, and these are the eyes. This is the Zinch force, kind of attached to the one that they're kind of trying to get to Hammer Hall. But that was, and this is the eye that's seen. So they come across this force, and we kind of learn that there's, maybe from that previous encounter, that there are 2 eyes to this Zinchian, 2 heads of this Zinchian force. There's the eye that's seen, and there's the eye that's not seen. And so the eye that's seen comes at them, they fight. and they kind of manage to slip out of it. Again, kind of fight it down and get away. And then I think that doesn't one of the tree lords come smashing through that
lands on top of the eye that is seen and Gotrek, and the eye that's seen, it evades, like kind of says, "Whoa!" Like I'm out.
That's a direct quote. Yeah.
Yep. Everyone gets one of those. Like I think lots of people say that. I'm out.
This is my one.
Drop.
Yep. So the tree pins Gotrek down to the ground, but the eye that is seen escaped, or escapes the tree man, but he's still at large, right? And so Jourdain sort of recognizes that Gotrek's pinned, and there's that Fate Master right there. Here's my moment. I'm afraid, I'm terrified, but like I'm gonna rise to the occasion. And so he rushes this Fate Master, and sort of the scene cuts there as he's sort of charging this big bad guy. Bad news. Next scene, we find out that Gotrek is able to free himself. Fate Master is nowhere to be found. But Jourdain is in the mud, basically. He's been killed in that fight. He wasn't able to take him on. Poor guy.
But that was his moment to kind of avenge everything that happened to the people that had followed him there. All the people that were being their names and kind of stationed being dragged through the mud by the Tzeentchian force. The Fate Master's right there, and like you said, kind of mustered his, like Gotrek kind of encouraged him and said, you got one chance or
opportunity to blow,
or that, kind of again fed his vengeance and saying this is a noble thing, a worthy thing to go after. And that was the moment he kind of, instead of cowering, went to strike and failed.
Yeah.
And this hits Gotrek pretty hard.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Like and we've glossed over a little bit. Like there's some moments where Gotrek is like, "Oh, so as a battlesmith, you tell stories." Like, well, and he's like, "I had somebody who told my story once. I don't need that anymore." When he's fighting, he talks about like, "Oh, he gets hit on his left side. He's like, I'm used to having someone there to guard that for me." Then Jourdain goes down.
Now my joke makes sense.
Jourdain goes down and he starts. Gotrek it sounds at first like he may be grieving for Jourdain, and the battlesmith's like, well, Broder's like, he fought bravely, and then after a while figures out we're talking about two different people. Like Gotrek is thinking back on Felix, and so there's I thought he was starting to have a connection with Jourdain, and there's this like pretty callous moment where Broder is like, well, we'll get him back, to his family or whatever. He says, like, bro, you're speaking, of course, of Jourdain. He fought bravely. And Gotrek's like, no, what? What are you even talking about? Jourdain who? And like, just...
Though you say that, and that is very clearly the moment that we're having right here. Yeah. But, I don't, once we get to the end of the story, I don't know if that still holds true. Like,
right. Yeah.
There's a part where you're saying he's kind of seeing through Jourdain as a person to his connection to Felix, and maybe he's dead. But he's also kind of imprinting those things that he needs onto other people and kind of evaluating their worth based off of comparison to Felix. And so there's this, he definitely sees that there's an act of bravery here, etc. But I mean, he's been around for a long time. So how he deals with death is a lot different than your average person.
He does take Jourdain's breastplate and uses it as a shoulder pauldron.
Sure. Which makes, that explains why he has a lion on his shoulder in a lot of the artwork now, on the cover of the book.
Yeah, and he gets it put on his shoulder by having Broder smash it on there, which is very
Wait, how would you do it?
I mean,
a rope.
Sounds like how an Iron Jaw might do it. I was kind of like, well, I don't. Does that work? Yeah. I guess it works.
I suppose.
Yeah, the new mini has that as well.
Yeah. Oh, does it? Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's a really cool motif. Because, man, we did gloss over a few things. Like the lion was the image of the Adassans, which again was the city state. And so that's why he has that lion. Real neat.
So does he swear an oath at this point for Jourdain? He mentions kind of taking on this revenge.
I think so, because if he's gonna, and I don't, whether or not he does an official oath, I can't remember. But Gotrek's nothing but motivated by revenge, and so this is a prime opportunity for him to get revenge on somebody. And so I think
for a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he jumps at the opportunity to do so.
And this may be where he's imprinting, like he's got his own things that he wants payment for, and he almost maybe uses this as an excuse. Oh, this is the tangible thing right here that I can point to say that allows me to get what I want.
Yeah, agreed.
But again, he doesn't. His feelings aren't on his sleeve in that kind of way. He's not a emotional person.
Some feelings, other feelings are very clearly on his sleeve in terms of like how he interacts with other people and like his sort of bristly attitude towards folks. But
it's funny. At one point, he like gets on Broder for being down on humans. He's like, "What's your problem? Like you're down on humans? Like you need to open your eyes and see where I'm like, Gotrek, my bud, like you are straight crapping on elves for being elves. Like he doesn't always seem like the most self-aware person.
Geez.
And that's where, I mean, it's kind of there's almost like a automatic system of like picking on things, or like picking on the people around him, or like being his unhappiness or his being in chaos for a millennium, is resulting in him just picking on things, which I don't know if those are his real feelings or just like him operating, trying to process the heck out of this thing,
like
right?
Quintessential mother-in-law, isn't he?
Yeah.
Why
can't you provide a better life for my daughter?
I don't know. Where's your mother-in-law from?
I don't know.
Shout out to all our mother-in-law fans out there, though. We love you.
Yeah, you're great. Also, God forbid if mine ever... I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I did not mean that.
Please.
Yeah. Please. But the scene, or this section, this larger chapter is about to close out, but we get a snapshot real quick before it ends of Malineth sort of on the trail of these Duarden. And so she's picking through the charwood. She comes across the dead bodies of the fire slayers, and she rolls up to this. Oh, they were heading toward a realm gate. I don't know if we said that. That's what they were going to in the charwood. And she reaches the realm gate, and she's like, basically villain, like speaks to herself like, oh, we're about to get him. We're on.
So here's the thing. She's talking. There's a number of occasions where she's talking clearly to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has something to do with like a locket. Like there's some source, and I can't tell if it's like in her head or if she's communicating directly with somebody. Like
I think it's left intentionally vague, though. But my impression is that she's talking to someone who's not there. Like there's not someone listening, but rather and this doesn't preclude your suggestion, but I think she makes it a point to say that like, she like killed the thing that she was talking to.
That's right. Yeah.
But again, that doesn't mean that it can't hear her. Like it could be anything, but
she put it in a locket.
Yeah, I think but I do think it's maybe in her mind, or just like we need her to be able to talk out loud to someone, and it's now her locket.
What do we have a name for our necromancer?
Uthan.
Here we go.
Oh, do I got a name? Of course I got a name. That's not actually the last episode. I didn't write down names, but this one I did.
But we're following part of his promises to get them out of the Twinfire Peak or Keep, and then to a realm gate that will get them to Hammer Hall ahead of the chaos force that has duped the forces of order into thinking that they're from the...
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, they're looking to take the shortcut, long cut, whatever, have a chance to get ahead.
Yep.
Agreed. And that ends our not scene, because these are all scenes, but our part. And we can move on to part 3. Bird just got real cold in here. Did you guys feel that?
It's so cold.
Real chilly.
How did that get so cold so fast?
What's cooler than being cool? Reading about Gotrek. All right, so Broder and Uthan are sort of sitting around a spirit fire, because we're in the realm of Shyish. Can't just be a regular fire. That would be absurd. That's ridiculous. It's a fire made of spirits, and they're sort of commiserating.
At one point, he actually yells at him, like, throw another bone on your spirit fire. I was like, whoa. AOS to the max.
What is going on? Yeah.
It's a whole set of sound effects. Yeah.
Well, and like the spirits are always like also whining. Is that the word for a spirit in eternal torment? Whining.
Yeah. Suck it up.
You're gonna be
Eternity's
here soon.
not that long. Yeah.
But they're commiserating, because Gotrek's been like going off on his lonesome over this sort of trek as they're, marching through. They spent some time in Shyish, which is where this realm gate led. But Gotrek just comes back. He's like, all right, what was everybody sitting around for? Let's head out. And Uthan leads them to basically a ghost town. But by that I mean a literal ghost town, which is a town full of ghosts. And I think like flesh-eater court people too, like ghouls and things. Oh, I'm getting faces, so maybe I made that up.
There might be. I mean, there's reference. There were a couple times where there's reference like ghouls and stuff, and I didn't know if it was explicitly,
So I think Uthan's going down into this crypt to kind of commune with some the flesh-eater courts, but in a particular way, or like they know the way to someplace, or they know how to
San Jose
to kind of put some pieces together so that they can get to this realm gate that they're getting to get to Hammerhall.
Yeah, it's like one that moves or something.
And so, knowing where exactly it is at this moment, or that something like that. And so he's going down and he's talking about being respectful, so nobody else can come with him.
He's the Shyish guy. I don't know if we said it, but he's a necromancer.
He's a necromancer.
Yeah.
So he goes down and says, "Oh, don't follow me. I'm going to meet with these flesh eaters. These
There's a cool audio drama moment where Brodeur attempts to like listen up to the door. They do a good job with like the weird ghoul voices. You're like, it was pretty gnarly. I was like, ooh, yeah, that's somebody's listening to black metal on the other side of this door here. Like, it was very.
If anyone stumbled upon you listening to this story, you're like, nothing. No, this is what you think. But while they're waiting for Uthan to get his instruction from these unnamed people, I think they're just straight up attacked by Skaven, as Skaven are wont to do. They just roll up.
There's actually, right when it happens, there's an altercation where Gotrek is straight choking.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And Broder's like, behind you. And Gotrek's like, I've lived for a million billion years. I don't fall for that stuff anymore. And then right before Skaven bites him, Broder managed to beat it. He's like, Skaven, why don't you say so? Like, Gotrek, you goof.
Classic. Jeez, you got me good.
Well, then, again, it's kind of this persistence where he's just constantly talking and like throwing shade. Doesn't believe anybody. Doesn't give any F's about anything.
Won't stop telling Broder to be quiet. Right. Like, will you ever shut up and be like, woof, pot kettle, my butt.
It just keeps going. Like, that is a motif in his book. Yeah.
But I gotta say, like, that consistency, like, how do you put it? Like, he was doing it the whole time, and it was different every time. Like, he didn't repeat anything.
Not
like,
a single phrase was reused.
I feel like Guymer was like pulling it out, like, just keep giving.
He must be a dad, because like some of that stuff.
But I mean, I did really enjoy that as kind of an affect of Gotrek, that he's had thousands of years to come up or hear or say every like angle in the book on how to make somebody just like respect him, or to like not to like humble people, I guess. And whether good or bad, how he handles it or whatever. But yeah.
Well, and it's interesting that he can do it both verbally, but then obviously very, like physically as well. Like, he's got both of those in the holster.
Also, he looks good.
Oh, he looks great.
Yeah. So good.
We should all be so lucky. I was thinking about getting a mohawk.
Do it.
So they're fighting off these Skaven, and so Broder, like, responsibly is like, all right, well, I gotta go like alert Uthan. So he basically kicks in the door of this temple that he's kicking it in, and he finds Uthan already surrounded by Skaven. Oh no, they already got in.
Oh no.
How did that happen? And so he jumps in to rescue the dude, but they call him the Barrow Walker. The Barrow Walker is pretty handy with a spell, and he starts casting spells left and right to defend himself.
Yeah, and they're like, what? We've been helping you the whole time, you could do this?
Yeah. Well, and he's all like, oh God, Skaven, where'd they come from? Oh, boom, boom, boom.
I wasn't meeting with them.
No, God, no.
In secret.
And so Gotrek joins in, and so they're basically driving off. They're able to drive off the Skaven, but that's not the only threat here. But rather, Malineth, who had been on their trail this whole time, plops in, and it seems as if she's there to,
very dark elf word.
Yeah,
plops in.
Surprise! She's there to just straight up murder everybody.
Well, I think that they had some sense that the Master Rune was there.
No,
and
Gotrek I think Broder
Broder
can
could
feel
smell
it.
it.
Yeah, they can smell it.
Mm.
And there's still a whiff of it. And
Oh, that's maybe what I meant.
Necromancer Uthon is like, yeah, it's just like residue. It's after effect.
Like he has any concept of like what? Don't you tell a fire slayer his business?
Yeah.
But so there's a little bit of a fight. Malineth is able to huck a poison knife at Uthon, who then proceeds to like cast Purple Sun and explode the whole dang place.
Yeah, and like melt half of Gotrek's face at one point, like make it super old.
And makes it better, I think. Right? Like he gets some like cool gray hairs. Like I love mine.
Distinguished.
Like, I'm really into that. Any day now, it's gonna be me. But
saying any day now you'll have some gray.
Yeah, that's what okay, fine.
The day has arrived, sir.
Problem is I'm also losing it as fast as it's turning gray. I feel like we just fast forward a big fight. Like there's more to it than that, but that's basically what it boils down to. Uthon casts a big spell, but he takes a knife to the shoulder. Malineth does, after this big explosion, she's able to like slink away in the sort of the aftermath of the big spell, and everybody else has to sort of take stock of where they're at. Gotrek has a melted face, and the Necromancer is sort of like on death's door because like he's got poison pumping through his vein. Yeah,
he's like, you got to get me to Hammerhall.
And we don't. So we don't know exactly at this point why she attacked him.
Correct. And
other than she had he had already kind of run into her previously.
Yeah, we had some sense that he was being hunted by her before, like he was trying to evade her. Yeah.
And so they were helping him in some sense get to Hammerhall as bodyguards or something like that to protect from her.
That was the agreement.
Okay, that's right.
And so he says it again, like, you got to get me to Hammerhall. I know folks there who will be able to take care of me, but like we got to get there. So basically, everybody wants to get to Hammerhall.
And then he says, "Oh," and they're like, "Well, why should we help you?" And then he's like, "Well, because Felix is there." And Gotrek's like, "What?
What?
I never even said his name to anybody,
to anyone." So apparently, Uthon is more than meets the eye. He's got some of that sweet info. And so, scene fades to black, and we fast forward a little bit. Our folks are now on a boat, on a weird ghost boat. I think being rowed by ghosts, maybe.
Ghosts.
Yeah, and they're navigating this frozen fjord or something, heading in some direction that the Necromancer, barely conscious, but is able to like still direct them in the direction they need to go. But even though they're on this frozen again fjord or some body of water, Gotrek still occasionally is heading off on his own mysteriously, and no one seems to know why. And apparently, it's taken Broder this long to like sneak out and then like follow him and see where he's headed. I
think Broder's getting less and less like putting up with. Like, there's that part of him that's like, yeah, Gotrek's like something bigger, but there's also a part where he's getting less intimidated by him, or maybe is just like because he kind of starts taking some ownership or starts getting some kind of credit from Gotrek when he's helping out in some of the fights and that sort of stuff. So I feel like he's getting a little more brave or a little less, I don't know, just putting up with.
Well, they say don't meet your heroes, and so like I wonder if like some of the luster's rubbing off on Gotrek as well. But Broder follows Gotrek on one of his dips, and Gotrek plops himself down and starts chatting with a ghostly visage of another dwarf. Duarden, I'm sorry. I don't know who this guy is.
Well, they call each other dwarf. They're from the world that was.
In fact, this is maybe the one story where I'm allowed to repeatedly use the word dwarf.
They even have a moment here where they say, "So what's up with Duarden?"
Weird. David, do you know who this guy is?
Yeah, so this is Snorri Nosebiter, and he was a character in the original Slayer series. Okay, so gotcha. He's even more unhinged than Gotrek. Rather than a mohawk, he has nails in his head. So he's like 1, 2, 3 nails down the center of his head to make a metal mohawk.
That is very metal. I'll give it that.
Yeah, he's pretty gnarly. He had a foot cut off by Gotrek. I don't remember why that happened, but he's not very bright. Like he just seems to be kind of this cheerful, dim-witted fella.
Poor memory, it seems, as well.
Yeah, Gotrek's like, well, of course you're having trouble with numbers. You couldn't count past 15 since I cut off one of your feet. It's like, whoa, sick burn. Got it. But it is a moment, and Broder, looking on, sees that they're just sitting there as kind of two friends, and they have the chance to reminisce about the world that was. And being dead, Snorri has some sort of insight. Gotrek's able to say, like, hey, we're trying to find this gate, and Snorri's like, I don't. Or he actually talks about himself in the third person, right? It's like, Snorri doesn't remember something about fires, and I don't know, but and he brings up some of the other Ulrika and Max. He thinks he saw them at a party. These are other companions that were part of the original series. But he says Felix is not here, which is to say Felix is not here in the realm of death. So Felix is out there somewhere,
sure,
theoretically.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the fact that like these characters from the old world do exist here, like you would expect Felix would be here if he shared their fate.
Right.
So that I imagine would give Gotrek quite a bit of hope.
In that exchange about Dwarden versus Dwarf,
let it go.
Well, Gotrek does this thing again where he's a little more conscientious, and this is where you think that maybe he is, I guess, more aware. But he basically says something like, "Well, Dwarf, it's probably just some name that the humans like in the human tongue." Or something to that effect.
Yeah, like he's like, well, yeah, exactly. We didn't call ourselves dwarves; they called us dwarves. Right. So, like, who cares what the word is? Yeah.
So, like, Dwarden is just somebody else's name for it, or the that's their own name for it. So, just an interesting, like, this is an old world character saying, "Get over it." It's Dwarden.
And the one thing I looked up a little bit. The one thing I do know about Snorri is actually, I think Gotrek was the one who killed Snorri too at a later book.
I think that might be true.
Spoiler alert, but
backwards spoilers.
In the spoiler phase.
In the spoiler phase, so it's totally cool. So Broder hears everything the Guymer wants us to know about Gotrek, and then proceeds to run back.
Snorri gives them a little bit of a hint of what they're about to come to, the realm gate that they're about to come to. So something about the door and in his belly and etc.
It's very cryptic, and so it's like, cryptic. I'm sorry, I can't remember all this junk.
Yeah, so he's kind of like, that's not helpful. Mm-hmm. And then they head back to bed.
And Broder runs back, and then Gotrek comes back as well. And that was a fun little scene. I like the addition. I think it was a worthwhile. Excursion.
It gave Gotrek another sort of relatable moment where he was not being quite so bombastic.
Sure. Well, it's rare to see him nice, like just straight up nice to somebody, and that was. Breath of fresh air.
Kept telling him how dumb he was. And, so.
Well, that's me being nice to you. No, I'm just.
Gotrek's a complex individual.
He's got a lot of layers. He's like an onion. All right. So the boat continues on, and it makes you cry. So the boat basically reaches a giant iceberg per the direction of Uthan, and he, I guess, recovers. Like he rises from his stupor a little bit, and he's like, "Hey, this is our destination." And they're like, "What? This is just a giant iceberg. Like we couldn't even climb that thing if we wanted to." And he's like, "Well, we don't have to." And he like splits it open down the center, him being Uthan, and reveals that there's God Beast number 2. Kicking it inside this giant iceberg. It's like a skeletal sea creature thing. Yeah,
each vertebrae as long as their boat.
Yeah. So not a small sea creature, a large sea creature. And he reveals that now that he was not who he claimed to be all this time, or maybe he was more than what he claimed to be all this time, and that he used to be this devotee of Nagash, but when Nagash boogied down to Styx after his defeat by Chaos, he basically pulled a similar move to what Sigmar did. And I feel like we've seen stories before about we've seen people's reactions to Sigmar closing the gates to Azir. Uthan basically had that same reaction to Nagash getting his butt kicked and hiding out.
He saw it as Nagash retreating and abandoning his loyal subjects.
Yeah, exactly. A very parallel line of thinking to other humans in the wake of Sigmar, and so he turned to Chaos as well, and so he's like a Chaos necromancer. Mm-hmm. And so he reveals this in this large villain monologue. Again, we get quite a few of those in this story, and he's like, all right, well, now I'm outie.
So he is the eye that was unseen.
Yeah, the eye that was
not
unseen.
seen, yeah. There's kind of a cool story about this realm gate, is that Nagash ordered this god beast and his thrall to eat the realm gate, so as to deny it. Basically, now you can't get to, back to Hammerhall.
Like that's going to stop anybody. But then in doing so, he pissed off the god beast. Got on his bad side by doing so, and so now the god beast has a vendetta against Nagash, and that's why he's like working with this eye, not seen. And I guess the god beast like breathes fire on the necromancer, who's like
just straight vaporizes him.
Yeah. Who rises up on a cloud of spirits to receive his fate, and he disappears into this god beast's maw, as he's vaporized. And now our two Duarden are like, what now?
Yeah, I thought he was dead.
Yeah, I did too, and especially because the same thing happens to them. They too get vaporized.
Right. So there's a conversation about and Broder's again the remembering, kind of putting two together, and says so Gotrek's ready to fight this thing, and Broder's says, well, no, the gate's inside. He puts Snorri's words together, and Gotrek's where did you hear that? And so
it's like you traitor, you he yells at him because he realizes like, oh, you must have been there listening to me.
And so he convinces Gotrek tells Gotrek to don't fight it, like convince it to help us, right? To appeal to its sense of not being not loving Nagash or anything Nagash is about, and Nagash wants. There's something about so the reason Uthran does this is that he says Nagash doesn't want Gotrek to leave Shyish. Mm-hmm. That Gotrek is a beacon, like his soul is
the treasure,
is a huge deal, and it being in Shyish is a distraction to Nagash so that he can escape. And so he goes and intends to just leave him here to fight this monster and trap them in Shyish. And so Broder says, no, we can figure this out. Here's the pieces. He gives some sort of speech to the dragon, or intimidates or whatever to the dragon, and then the dragon gets them through the realm gate.
Yeah, he convinces him by saying, like, let Gotrek out of here, because that's exactly what Nagash doesn't want. Yep. And so the god beast is like, good point. I'm going to breathe ghost fire on you.
Yeah. As an aside, I think I got distracted, right? You can cut this out, but I think I got distracted during this bit. And I thought they had like some glorious last charge. Like they're in the water. Broder's like, I saved you. I knocked you off before you got in too big a fight. And Gotrek's like, no, like, well, Grimnir was a wanderer. He's a fighter. He's a brawler. Let's wander. Let's fight. Let's brawl. Mm-hmm. And Broder's like, yeah, all right, okay, let's do it.
He just says, okay.
Yeah. And that I feel like that's the last thing I remember about the chapter. So I didn't remember the convincing thing. It's a side effect. We'll talk about it later, but with an audiobook.
Your mind can wander sometimes. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. We didn't just make that up.
Man, no, I'm second guessing it.
It seemed like something that happened. I feel like I remember that because they made it a point to be like, this god beast hates Nagash, and so they wouldn't have brought that up if it didn't like pay off.
But he does say, I just said I would. There's nowhere I'd rather be than inside the water. Like I'd rather be fighting this thing.
Yeah. And so the scene cuts to black. And okay, if we're talking about things that were confusing, I'm pretty sure that I thought they died at this point.
Yep.
And that's the end of like part 3. And then the next part is they're getting drunk on a wall of Hammerhall. Like that was very disorienting. That jump from one to the other.
Yeah. Well, and even like, there's a couple of the jumps where, time had passed, and or like, when they got to Shyish, like Gotrek was gone.
Yeah.
Right. It was the 3, Uthan,
Broder,
Jordan, and Broder, and then
Jordan's
dead.
Yeah.
But like something where it was like, oh well, he just gets off. So goes off on his own. So there's just these weird, somewhat of a weird cut of like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on now?
Sure, but it's one of those things that like they're not going to record like unnecessary in between scenes.
Yeah, I think that's
time is money.
The economy of an audio drama is that you get to what's important, and there may be some cutting room floor stuff, or just like, hey, we've got this much space on in these CDs or these discs or whatever.
Yeah.
So what are we going to talk about?
Sure. Plus, I'm sure Blessed ain't cheap. All right, so it jumps us to the walls of Hammerhall, where Gotrek is proper drunk, and basically offending everyone he talks to. Like he gets all up into the grill of this Stormcast, when it ends up being this named Stormcast that's mentioned earlier in the story, where he's actually this great hero.
One of Jordane's tribe.
Yeah, like Jordane's like great ancestor, his great grandfather or something like that. But that doesn't bother Gotrek. He wants to fight him. And like they even like lay hands on each other and something, and Stormcast is trying to peel Gotrek off or something to that effect. And he's like, "How are you even remotely this strong? This is ludicrous. How are you that strong?" Just goes to show that Gotrek could probably crumple a Stormcast in their armor.
The Stormcast like bats him away and knocks him over.
Well, no, tries to. I think.
So I think he does backhand him, and he like trips or falls, like not from necessarily just the strength of the Stormcast, but partially being inebriated. And then he thinks he's kind of done with him, and then the Stormcast grabs him by the collar and yanks him down to his level. Gotrek yanks the Stormcast down and puts him in a headlock. And I'm remembering it as a noogie, and you can't take that away from me.
Sure. No, it's your internal.
But there's this, and he's pinning him down there, and the Stormcast is like, "What? How is this possible?" Yeah. And so there's a bit of that altercation, but it's a humorous. Like, I'm glad that was in it, like a little bit of humor and a little ridiculousness. But it was not a ton of point for it, other than to kind of have a little slapstick.
Sure.
Well, then he rips his helmet off and he's like, "Oh, you're not Felix."
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's part of it, right? And then later on, because the idea being that Gotrek's here trying to find Felix, somebody pokes fun at him. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to rip the helmets off of every single Stormcast in the city? Like, there's thousands, millions of them here. So after that sort of altercation with the Stormcast, who comes? I feel like I use that intro so many times, but who comes strolling up but Malineth, who apparently knows where Gotrek is just hanging out. But she's dressed a little differently. She's is or is not in her assassin garb. I was confused what she meant by that. But the Stormcast, like, it recognizes her, like it treats her with respect. Yeah, it's totally cool. And it turns out she's not who we thought. Again, all sorts of people are surprising us in this book, but rather she turns out to be an agent of Azir in some capacity. Yeah. Like she's on the, I guess, quote unquote, good guys' side.
Yeah.
And that she was, on a mission on direction from Azir to, get the Master Rune, take out Uthan, et cetera, et cetera. So she had, I would say,
she was on a mission from God.
Yeah, well, that's true. And she drops her sunglasses. But no, she had noble motives in some capacity.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, Sigmar or the she was on a mission that would have been good on our part, but yeah, because she's an elf, because we judged her to be a dark elf and evil.
Or Gotrek?
Oh, sorry, Gotrek. But it was hard. Like, he's like, it's her. Like, get her. What's she doing here? You can't believe it. And so he still doesn't quite buy it.
Sure.
She's a liar.
Yeah, exactly. So they chat about the circumstances. They basically look over the city walls, and they find that those fake Adassans are now just rolling up on the city, and they're like, "Oh, we did beat them. Well, that's something. I guess we have that win. What are we going to do about it? Like, we know the truth, that they're going to try and infiltrate the city. How can we stop them?" And so they come up with a plan, and then whoop.
Got another cut.
Yep, cut to the next scene. Well, who do we focus on next?
Yeah, do we split the party a bit? We
do split the party a bit. Like every good D&D group.
Yeah.
So we cut to Malineth, who's now part of the plan is infiltrating these fake Adassans.
Right.
So they've rolled up on the city. The gates were thrown open, and they let them in. And they are now navigating the city streets, which are now basically under attack and under siege by a variety of chaos forces. Not just Arcanites, but there's it seems to be Khorne forces here too. And so these fake Adassans are putting on a little bit of a show for anybody who could be possibly watching, and they're fighting they're fighting Khorne Bloodbound, and I think there's a Bloodthirster at one point. But this is it's all pretend, as they're sort of trying to disperse into the city streets. And so they're having this conversation amongst themselves. Like Jourdain's cousin is here, and he's actually the main turncoat. And so he's talking amongst his lieutenants, like, oh, why are we fighting so hard? This should be a little bit easier. We shouldn't be throwing our lives away on these Khorne forces when we're basically all on the same side. Malineth comes strolling up. She's sort of in a disguise. She's, pretending to be an Edescent lioness or something like to that effect. But she's kind of seen through pretty quickly. But not so much so that the cousin, attacks her, but rather he's like, well, you're not who we think you are. Who does he think she is? Just another Chaos Follower, I believe, is what how he pins her. But she's able to ingratiate herself into the party as they, are traveling throughout the city streets to some unknown destination at this point. And from there, that scene ends, and then we cut over to Gotrek and Broder, who are tailing the Adassins throughout the streets of Hammerhall. They're heading in some direction, and Gotrek and Broder are following them while Malineth is with the group up ahead. So the Adassins, the quote-unquote Adassins, are navigating the city streets. They come to basically a traffic jam where a bunch of other free guilders are trying to bring supplies and different crates and barrels and stuff to a different part of the city. And while everyone's sort of traffic jammed in the center of this crossroads or this courtyard, the Skaven come erupting out of nowhere in the city, and there's this big fight. They're battling left and right. They're throwing poison wind globes into people who are penned into different dead ends and things, and there's this big battle. Yeah, with the Free Guild, they're able to, although they're sort of stunned and surprised and ambushed, they're able to fight the Skaven back, especially with the help of Gotrek and Broder. But they do lose sight of their quarry. Yeah, but Malineth fortunately had been leaving a trail, and so they're able to pick up the trail that Malineth had left to follow.
Trail of blood.
Probably a trail of blood.
Trail of knives pointing.
Yeah, actually, even more hardcore, I suppose. Leading them into this, whatever their destination was.
That was very nice of her to do.
Yeah, it was super nice. And then we cut back to Malineth. They're in this, I don't know, I want to say warehouse or abandoned building where they're not being observed by, the city proper.
Kind of sneak away to someplace.
Yeah, and so what's going on there?
It's kind of the gathering of these Chaos Warriors or Chaos Followers, and Uthan kind of makes his way up to the front center stage and is addressing the crowd kind of in this kind of haughty, we've succeeded in duping these people and that people and getting to where we're at, and we're ready kind of to strike and to make our move. And yeah, so this is the case again where I was a little expecting Gotrek to just run up and just go very blunt. Here you go. But he's kind of calling out to the crowd, and Malineth, in her disguise, gets his attention or something, and he calls her up. And this is the point where maybe they've seen through her disguise a little bit.
Well, he's looking for a volunteer, and she volunteers up. It says they have the Master Rune, and the Master Rune needs to be given into somebody, they need a sacrifice, basically. So looking for somebody to volunteer to be sacrificed. Yep. And for a cult that prides itself on how well it's infiltrated something, it's basically somebody put on their clothes and was in Flynn with them.
Sure.
She's good at what she does.
Also, furthermore, there's no better selection process other than first person to raise their hand gets it. Oh, you? Okay, cool.
So she goes up and he kind of steps in front of her. So she's kind of takes a step back while he's addressing the crowd, pulls out the rune. And to me, the dialogue is something to where it feels like there's a moment where I thought he was going to recognize her, but she rolls good on her deception roll. And then he kind of puts his guard down, or at least puts her behind him, and she pulls a dagger out and gets it behind him and kind of whispers a last, gotcha, and slides the knife through his head.
Maybe just his back. I can't remember, but she whispers.
I'm making more stuff up.
She whispers something real smooth about this is Kurt. I'm paraphrasing, but this is courtesy of like something Kane, like Kane's full Christian name. Like it's something crazy. It was kind of a cool moment.
I offer this death to Caleb Mencha Kane, the god of murder, and say thank you, Uthan Barrelwalker, for allowing me to receive his blessing today. Drives a knife into Uthan's back.
When you hear hoofbeats, it's don't think zebra, think horse. And
he dies. Like, there's no more trick up his sleeve. There's no more disappearing, or
especially for like a devotee of Shaiish, you would almost expect him to like have something,
right?
But it does not
rise back up, or an extra life. +1 save.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like in a Tzeentchian cult where plotting and backstabbing are probably like run of the mill. You don't put somebody behind you.
No,
what are you doing? What are you doing, Uthan?
In fact, like if I were to wear armor at all, like if I can only pick one place to wear armor, it would be my back. In a Tzeentch cult. But no, he drops to the floor, and what else drops to the floor? But a Dumbmaster rune.
Dumbmaster rune.
And it like lands in a crater because it's so heavy and powerful, and it starts emanating all sorts of crazy Master Rune energy that seems like it's going to tear this place apart. And by this place, I mean the whole gosh darn city. How intense!
It's actually, I mean, there's no tents.
No, it's city. There's buildings. Yeah, there's not really camping. It's very urban. In fact.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Urban
this is gold.
Solid.
It's the gold of jokes.
It's the Master Rune gold. And so what are we going to do? We've got this huge, heavy bar, gold that's going to, destroy everything. The Dwarven come rushing in, and they just start hacking like chaos cultists to pieces. But for everyone that they killed, just as many are being killed by like the energy that's emanating from the Master Rune. Pretty strong stuff. And so they realize that the chaos forces realize that they're sort of overwhelmed and outmatched, so they boogie on out of there, and our heroes are left with trying to decide like how are we going to like prevent this right. Calamity, this disaster. So who goes first? What happens?
So you gotta pick it up, right? You gotta grab it and carry it.
The only way to contain it is to put it into Slayer flesh, basically. Mm-hmm. Like it's designed with that in mind, I think. So Broder is he's like, there's no way I can contain it. They're like, well, you have to. You're the only Fire Slayer around. You got to make it happen, bruh. And he, he gives it a shot, and there's a whole bunch of screaming and dramatic. He has all these flashbacks as if he is Grimnir. Like he basically, it's a powerful shard of his, lost god, basically. But he's not able to. It's too much for him.
And he gets like rocketed back and slams against a wall, and I think his arm was straight burned off. Yep. And this is for a Fire Slayer. That's pretty intense, right? Like,
yeah. Well, they talk about they're like, he's like, can't you pick it up? It's you live in lava. He's like, I can touch lava. I can't touch this.
Yeah. It's a different thing entirely. And so Malineth is out of ideas, and Gotrek's like, all right, well. I've lived a good life. Like, this is as good a doom as any. Let me give it a shot. And so he picks it up, plunges it in his own chest, and everything's right as rain. I mean, sure, like, pretty touch and go for a little bit. I think maybe he like convulses or seizes to some degree, but he's able to swallow that power down into his body, and he prevents the disaster. Man, I'm really underselling like how intense a moment this was.
I mean, it's one of those things like, and this part of we're talking about the audio drama is that we feel it, we sensed it, remember it, but like the specifics, the words we haven't looked back over, been able to take those notes as well. But I mean, there is this moment of like, he was already God level power. And as you mentioned, Davey, that perhaps when the rune was struck, that there was a calling that popped Gotrek out of out of chaos, the realm of chaos, and that this was meant for him in this time, in this place, for a purpose. And it's not like spelled out, but that it ends up in him and it multiplies his power to some degree past that.
It's over 9,000.
But we don't have a fight for him to show off what new powers he's gotten or anything like that. right? We've
tune in next time for Realmslayer Blood.
Which then I now understand your point before. Like, there wasn't enough fighting. Like, well, yeah, I guess, especially at this point where you expect him to, like, fly off the chain and, like, just go to town on people. Like, no, he doesn't really.
Like Neo, in The Matrix where I'm God.
Yeah. I can fly. Yeah.
But yeah, so we cut scene here.
Mm-hmm.
The chaos has, for the most part, been routed and dealt with. Gotrek has a new adornment, so he's now a fire slayer, I would say, by every intent and purpose,
but not by war
except
scroll.
for his own.
And he is allied, and Broder is dead.
Sad.
And Malineth is his ally.
Yeah.
So this journey from him popping in with the Master Rune to the Master Rune popping in him.
Oh, gross.
And him being complete his understanding of the world, and now at the end of this, what his understanding of the world is in more complexity and nuance.
Yeah, basically almost all of it is like changed or been turned on its head. And so there's like one of the final scenes is them like on the top of the battle, like on top of the ramparts is the word I was looking for. Just sort of fighting side by side against no one of any particular consequence, just talking about like what their next steps are going to be. Malineth makes it a point to say that, like, all right, well, now I can't get my hands on the Master Runes because it's all up in you. I guess I'll go where you go because you've got the rune, and if I can't bring it back, I'm probably dead. Like, there's probably people who would not, maybe not dead, but I'm due a punishment if I can't bring that back. So
because she kind of mentions bringing him back, but he's like not having that.
No, thank you.
So she has to come with him.
Yeah, and then he makes it a point to say, like, all right, well, I don't want to head to Hazir because it sounds like there's no monsters or any bad guys there. That doesn't sound like
lame.
It doesn't sound like my cup of tea. Let's.
I came for the party.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Travel the mortal realms. Does he have a destination? I forget what he says. Nope. No. Cool. That means any number of adventures could be written about him. What a perfect way to leave this open ended. Good job. Well planned.
Yeah.
And I guess it's sort of the scene fades on him. Like, that's the last we see of Gotrek.
And then.
But that's not the last thing we see. Do you want me? I'll tell you. Here it comes. It's a real short scene. Real, but delicious and full of weight and import. But rather the Fate Master, the Eye that sees or seen or whatever his title is, he comes rushing back to his superior to report on the events that have transpired. Gotrek is still alive. What? He's still alive? Alive? No, this will not. I don't know. Whatever Skaven says, because he reports it to Thanquol, the biggest, baddest Grey Seer of them all, who apparently has also survived the end of the world that was and exists in the mortal realms. I shouldn't say it's so surprised. We literally talked about it in the Skaven Battletome review, but he's now kicking it and alive and presumably just as schemy as ever, and not too happy that Gotrek is here as well.
Yeah. Poor Thanquol.
The end. Yeah, man, no one ever thinks of Thanquol.
I mean, you think it would just say Thanquol very much and be on your way.
No Thanquol.
Trying to make up for that intro still.
We're going to go back. We're going to do it again.
I was going to say, whatever you want, I'll splice it in. That's not true. I will not do that. Cool. And that's the end of the book. We did it, guys. We made it.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Without the crutch, that is Paul Wagner.
Well, and I think it had, as you heard me at the beginning of this, like, there was an aspect of the ease of an audio drama as far as consuming it. At the same time, I did do other things while I was listening to it, which probably contributed to being a little harder to contain it in my head. I'm not the rememberer. Mm-hmm. But despite the information we give you, there's a lot of the experience that you don't get.
Yeah, that's true.
By hearing us.
Well, there's quite a bit.
It's a ton that we had to kind of miss out on here, I feel like.
In the conversation, you mean? Or?
Yeah, there were...
Now's the time to bring it up if you want.
Sure. I mean, so there's things like, we see Gotrek, we learn about why he was even in there. Like, there's some reference to that. Like, he was in the realm of chaos as a deal so Grimnir could get out of the realm. Like Grimnir was in there fighting in the realm of chaos. That's part of the original legend, is that when the Chaos Gate opened at the top of the world, that was, back, not actually at the ending of it, Grimnir marched north, held the gate single-handed while the elves made their vortex. And so Grimnir was fighting in the realm of chaos sort of eternally. Well, I think, and this may be canon from some of the other books. I'm not sure, having not read them, and I'm sure a listener can advise us on that. But they talk about how Gotrek struck some deal with Grimnir, took his place so that Grimnir could then return to the actual realms.
Sure.
He feels tricked by Grimnir. He got an eye back, which then he lost once we kind of paused for that, but his face got melted. He lost one of his eyes in that, so he went back to having an eye patch. But anyway, so like some of that history, like he has known Grimnir on a personal level, has like, discussed things and made bargains with him and that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, and to your point about the trick thing, like reason even made the deal because he assumed he would get his doom there. Like that would be the end of him. And so he pops out the other side and disappointed. Like, what the heck, man? Like
nobody remembers him.
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to be, I want to do this great thing that will be remembered by all, and nobody even knows who he is.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd maybe be a little miffed as well.
I like that trading places thing. It reminds me of, isn't there a myth about Atlas holding up the world and kind of trading places for a bit or something like that?
I think like Hercules, maybe?
There's someone Loki as well. Loki is trapped below. Anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, just kind of that trading places with the god or, kind of thing. Again, it's, one of those myths or potential myth, but.
Sure. Let's talk about some of our standard questions and maybe some more interesting things we'll shake out. So what shape are the characters in at the end? I feel like we just sort of alluded to it, but Gotrek has a sweet new rune in his chest. He wants his axe back. I think that's one of his motivating factors.
He's not happy with the axe that he has.
Yeah, this smoldering, always on fire, magical axe. Not good enough for him.
Causes cancer.
Yeah, so I hear. And I think he still hasn't given up on the idea of finding Felix. I feel like the hints have been dropped in this book that, like, if he's not in the underworld, he's somewhere, and so there's reason to believe that like he could be found by Gotrek. Yeah. But in the meantime, he kind of has his new sidekick with Malineth, who's willing to join him, whether it's because of the rune, maybe she's running from somebody, or maybe she likes the cut of his jib. Yeah,
I mean, from that dialogue at the end, like she works for the Order of Azir or something, but may not be the most welcome of guests. Like there's still racial tension and mistrust.
And furthermore, I think we as listeners or readers still need to figure out who the heck she was talking to. Like, I feel like that's maybe an open-ended question that may yield some interesting stories to be told. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool. And then additionally, Thanquol is still out there, and I think we talked about him a little bit when we did the Skaven Battletome, but I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Moral Realms, both in this sort of storyline and maybe from a Skaven perspective as a whole. So that's pretty exciting times to be sure. Guys, who is your dude?
Or dudette.
Well, it's a gender neutral dude.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Give me one.
The guards at the Citadel who are just like, I'm just going to do my job and I'm going to do it really well. Yeah. Like, it's like, no, you're not coming through here. Like, I saw you. You already came through here. You're not tricking me. And then, okay. Oh, yeah, you're going to offer me Urgold? No, that's fine. You can keep it yourself. Like, it's just important that I do my job well.
I respect the bribe, but I will not partake in it. Yeah. Okay, cool. You're going to go last? Right. Yeah. Well, because, like, my guy's, like, Gotrek, and I feel like that's a little heavy-handed here, but I think for a lot of the same reasons that I really enjoyed Hamilcar, in that I felt like we were on the same... I felt... camaraderie. I feel like we were the same, me and him. And that I was on this adventure, and I feel like I was discovering things through his eyes. Like I was learning about the world, things that I think I've read about or I have some knowledge of already, but like seeing them fresh from a very skeptical perspective, I feel like really endeared me to him. Plus his surly nature was just a delight. I feel like it's rare that we read just like legitimately funny characters. Again, Hamilcar being one of them. I found him like out and out funny oftentimes, and I think in like these Black Library Age of Sigmar stories, that's a rarity. Like I was laughing out loud occasionally, listening or reading this. But then again, I'm also easily amused. But because of that, I really enjoyed him. Like whenever he wasn't on screen, I wished he was. Like I prefer him to be around. The only maybe complaint I would have is that like the constant getting on Broder's case, like it felt like it got played out. Like towards the end, it was getting a little exhausting. But the fact that he was able to get creative with his insults was like the saving grace there. But generally, it goes without saying, but the story was made by him, and I wonder how much of it is both like the writing, but then also like I guess Blessed's performance as well. At times it could be over the top, but I feel like it was like just the right amount of over the top, which is an oxymoron, and that doesn't really make any sense. But here we are.
It's like this is what you come here for.
Yeah, exactly. So having not been exposed to Gotrek at all, I think this is just downright delightful and a good introduction to the character.
Yeah.
Eric, what you got?
I mean, there was obviously the two foils. I don't know that I got enough of Malineth to know the real her. I think
you may never.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we got to know a little bit more of her at the end, where she was like taking things seriously, whereas before she was matching wits and having a good old time. But I think Broder is kind of my guy in this one, just because we do like we are. He is the realm's eyes for kind of figuring out who Gotrek is, and he has a journey from kind of knowing his place and kind of fitting into this lodge, and then to the point where he's like, I guess maybe with that realm beast and shy saying, no, I am a son of Grimnir. I can do something. I can affect something, and he makes that attempt at the end in order to kind of rise to that challenge. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect. I think he had his arc is in this story, and so I think that there's probably something more to unpack in that. But
cool. I like them too.
Yeah.
To get some listener questions, and actually we got some good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Or let me say, we got a lot of thems for this story, because people love talking about Gotrek. So a lot of our questions came from our Discord. So if you guys ever want to submit any questions for our future episodes, you can check out our Discord channel at www.themortalrealms.com/discord. Mm-hmm. Let's start with a question from Francis. He says, can Felix's role as a sympathetic foil truly be replaced by someone else? I have no perspective because I've never read Felix ever.
What if we're Felix? What if David Guymer is Felix?
Oh God, I can only hope so. He's my Felix, or am I his Felix?
Well, so there were some parallels, right? You had Jourdain kind of in there as being a human / manling. Next to him, he was making some connections. You had Broder, who was a storyteller, Storysmith, who was falling around, like again, roles that Felix held. But then the one it settles on is one that does not mirror Felix at all. Malineth. That seems like will be his companion moving forward, right?
Did Gotrek and Felix, did they have any sort of like antagonistic relationship at all?
I mean, a little bit. There was the cultural differences. I mean, they had many books together to kind of develop that, and I can only speak to the earlier ones. But
sure.
Felix would be exasperated by Gotrek's excesses and such. So
I think it does seem like Felix is irreplaceable.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book kind of hints at being able to replace him, but in the end doesn't.
Yeah.
And it seems like if we ever get to meet Felix again, the absence of Felix in Gotrek's life probably changed the way he sees Felix.
Yeah.
And their relationship won't ever be the same.
Well, even Gotrek at one point mentions that if I find Felix, he might even remember me. Like he sees what's going on through Stormcast. So
sure. Well, and to your points about how there's the two foils that we have in the story that are similar to Felix, but then there's the third that is nothing like him. It's almost as if we would have picked a companion that was similar to Felix, but not Felix. You'd be doing him a disservice.
Yeah.
But by going a completely different direction, you're sort of respecting the original character, and they'd be like, all right, well, he can't be replaced. We're not going to try to replace him in a similar way, but let's introduce something entirely new instead and see how Gotrek plays against a completely different character entirely.
Do you guys watch Doctor Who or are familiar?
Who?
No.
Yeah. British TV show.
I know what it is. Yeah.
But he is a man out of time, lives forever. which means, and he's never in the same timeline. So, but the thing is kind of a James Bond thing that the character always changes. The person playing it always changes, but the always has a companion or a human that's with them for a perspective, and that always changes. I could see something like that happening with Gotrek, where Felix is the standard now that by which everybody's judged, and there could be many companions over many books that kind of change again. That conversation shows different sides of Gotrek.
Yeah. Ned asked a whole bunch of questions. Ned, you asked too many. I'm just going to pick out a few of them. First of all, he says, "Where is Felix?" Which seems like a very straightforward, whatever question. But like, what do you guys hope to see from Felix, or where do you expect, or like, I don't want to describe per se, but like, what do you think could possibly have happened to Felix?
That's tough. It's one of those things that it's maybe more fun as the mystery, right? Mm-hmm. Like if he's just a Liberator Prime somewhere, and like,
Sure.
But the mystery is almost as fun as what it might actually be.
Sure. The possibilities are endless when you don't know. But Eric, what do you think?
In asking the question, my first thought was, but what if he is a chronicler of Sigmar? Then I said, no, what if he's a chronicler of Teclis? Mm-hmm. He's in the realm of light. And he is keeper of the knowledge of the whole realms.
Oh, snap. Yeah. My mind's been blown.
Yeah, he could be in one of the realms we somehow still don't know very much about.
Shadow? Yeah. He could, if he's here and his soul is as powerful or interesting as Gotrek's, that could be interesting.
Sure. I think he's just a Liberator Prime.
You like the mundane?
I just like the mundane. No, but I think,
or the obvious answer.
It would surprise me if he ends up not being like a Stormcast. Well, I don't know. I don't want to settle on that, but it just seems like that juxtaposition of what we know like generally Stormcast to be, and how that could be like the Felix version of a Stormcast slotted next to Gotrek could also make for some very interesting stories. I don't think it's the most outlandish or creative, but I feel like you could get a lot of mileage out of that that relationship. So I don't hope that's what it is, but like that's where my expectation is. Maybe
the naked dwarf and the tin can man.
Yeah, basically. And then he asked, "What were our thoughts on Snorri about his friends in Shyish? Did that do anything for you? That call back to those characters? Now, granted, you didn't read any of those books, but that tickle your fancy, Davey?"
Yeah, I mean, and Ulrika and Max, I think, entered the books after I was.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that referenced them, but I remember encountering Snorri, and they talk about Malachi McKayson, this mad engineer. Anyway, references some other characters, and I liked it for the reference, but I just like the human is the wrong term here, but the relatable moment that Gotrek has when he's sitting with this old friend. It made him, made it possible to connect to him better than his sort of bombastic other self.
True.
I think it showed that again. It was a thread to the old world. It was, we've been separated the two from Laura's perspective because we're in the Age of Sigmar. We're focused there, but Gotrek coming in, popping through like a needle, and then kind of this moment is a kind of almost feels like a push back, or pulls it back into the old world. Like there's a thread that connects the two forever, and this gives us a sense that how long Gotrek's been alive, and almost like his power level is hard to fathom. Like that age is hard to fathom too. So to kind of see that connection, but then you also, like you said, they're here in Shyish because, of course, when people died in the old world, did they come to Shyish as well? Or some form of...
Or wherever they went at the time, did that get turned into what Shyish is now?
And, the story had several other mentions to connect you back. Like there's one point where they're in a temple and he sees the names of these gods and specifically sees like Mor and Osirian, and these, Osirian is the god of the dead that Nagash, when he became a god, killed on the way there. Mor was, the old empire god of the dead and all that. So it was throughout this, and I'm sure I didn't catch them all, but it was fun to have that through line.
Sure. A lot of nods and winks.
To the just more conversation with the Snorri. Gotrek yells at Broder all the time, like, what will it take for you? Like, what do I need to do to get you to shut up? But in that same vein, like the question is what would it take to get Gotrek to be quiet and like calm and like subdued? And I think we find out at this point in the story that like these conversations with his friends are something that like subdues him and gets him to, quiet down.
You mentioned Gotrek. Like the thing you were annoyed by is Gotrek maybe going too far in reprimanding Broder about his talking or trying to chime in. Do you think that there was something about Broder that reminded him too much of Felix or that relationship or that rememberer or that foil that was just like hitting him the wrong way?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Or maybe there's a certain level of projection, not his own projection, but projecting him another person onto him.
Yeah, that he's kind of trying to make him fit this role that he's not fitting, and he doesn't.
Yeah, very
taking him off more than
interesting.
What does Paven ask?
Paven asked a question, and if you want to hear more of Paven, you can find him on the Dogs of War podcast. He said, "What are y'all's thoughts on how the book handles the world that was versus the Moral Realms conflict?" So first, as it relates to the characters, Gotrek's experience and grief, I think it was respectful, and I think it was a serious nod, and it wasn't just like tongue in cheek, like wink, wink, hey, here's some fan service. But I think it served to inform the mind space that Gotrek is in, and because of that, then informed the plot. Like it was I think a character driven plot in that regard, in that Gotrek's history weighed on who he was as a person, and in doing so, it directed where the plot went, which I think people, everybody says that character-driven plots are the most important. If that had any driving factor, I think it contributed to the story. Then it was important.
Yeah, Gotrek has kind of the Superman problem. Like, he's so powerful. Like, he's done so many over-the-top things that you got to figure out. You kind of even know going in, like, none of the things he's fighting here are really gonna, put it to him. So you got to find some other way to give him a conflict to deal with. And for him, it's the confusion about this new world that he's in. It's the, where is my, the greatest friend I ever had? Where is he? And so that's the same thing.
Where's my axe? Where's my good ale? Where's my...
Yeah. So it's the same thing with, stories about Superman. Like when you're like omnipotent,
always looking for his axe, always looking for his axe.
How do you find some drama in that? So I think it was essential to the story to have that old world. It's great for that interface. It's kind of tailor made for that, I guess.
Sure.
Well, I think as you mentioned, Guymer wrote Gotrek in the old world. All the authors that are writing Age of Sigmar now wrote stories, or many of them wrote stories in the old world. I think that while the fan base, some portion of the fan base feels betrayed, or they don't like that transition, or that happened. Like the End Times was an extremely respectful and big invested way to kind of change the world. And I think, in these moments of Gotrek remembering or thinking about or calling out I'm sure is David Guymer saying, "Oh man, you remember that? You think about that?" He's remembering these things that were part of his writings back in the day, and the chance to write about those things again, or give, like, those are genuine, I think. And some of that's me, because I know that about the authors, and I've heard them talk on Stormcast about kind of the joys of revisiting these characters and stuff. So I definitely know that there's a lot of that respect and honor that goes into it. And I think I felt it,
Yeah, I agree. He also asked about like the narrative and the meta narrative of the reader's nostalgia, but I think we just touched on all that as well. So
I don't think you need to know. Like, I didn't read much about the old world, and those were still very meaningful for me.
Yeah, I get that same sense. Another member from our Discord, it's I don't know if I'm saying this right. Is it PJ Shard? It's a weird name.
Weird, yeah.
Yeah, it's real. So he asked. Man, these questions are out there. No, he asked, did they make Gotrek into an AOS character, or is he still an old world character that does not become an AOS character by the end of the book? What do you guys think about that? Did he grow into AOS?
Well, we've got the challenge again that you guys haven't read any of them from the old world, and I've only read the first 3, and there were another 6 or 7 or however many on there, so I can only compare. I can say that the ones that I did read, he was clearly a old world character, and he feels from where he was in those, at the end of Demon Slayer, which is the third of those, to where he is now, he feels way more in the AOS vein of things, like somebody who fought for eons untold in the realm of chaos. That's a very Age of Sigmar sort of thing. Although he does remark on it, like, I'll give you this, when you guys do things in this weird world of yours, you do it big,
I feel like by the end of, without reading the 9th or 10th novel of Gotrek and Felix, I feel like he would have had to have been at some power level that made him more like an AOS character in the world it was, right? Like that he didn't fit. Like if he's trading places with Grimnir, like he's larger than life. I definitely felt with him like, slamming a pauldron into his shoulder and then the master rune into his chest at the end of this, just, let's just do this right here and now. That felt very AOS. It felt very big, and it felt very, they showed us enough big things and how he addressed them that felt very much like an AOS character.
Sure.
He fits.
Although I definitely agree with what you guys are saying in terms of what he's capable of, and like in terms of like his actions and the things that he does and the things that are done to him. Like he at this point, he does feel like an AOS character. However, from like him as a person, or his like internal characteristics, I still think that by the end of this story, he does kind of still harken back to an old world for me. Like he still stands apart from other characters that we read about in AOS. In that,
just because his first move when they get to Hammerhall is go to the bar and drink.
I mean, actually, you touched on a point. Yeah, kind of, in a sense. Or like, I don't know, his first move is to bite someone's nose off. Like, there's plenty of things in the Age of Sigmar that bite noses for sure, but like, he still kind of carries an air of like low fantasy like personality thrust into a high fantasy body and thrust into a high fantasy setting. I feel like a lot of the people that we read about are like the heroes are heroic and the evils are, dastardly. And sometimes there's shades of gray when we see like the Free Guild people, but those stories sort of stand out against the backdrop of AOS as well. And they kind of harken back to the world that was. Like when we read about Free Guild people, I think why people are always clamoring for those stories is because it harkened back to a setting that they were familiar with. It reminded them of the old world. And so in the same vein, I feel like Gotrek kind of carries himself as someone who comes from that era as well. And I think he still does by the end of the book. Now, granted, he's got a rune in his chest and he's cackling madly as he's slicing through people. But like, I still get the sense, I can't put my finger on why or how, but like deep down, he still seems like a brawler, like a gutter brawler, like the sorts of people that you would come across when we were playing Warhammer Fantasy or RPG, as opposed to someone you would encounter, out on, a mountain that's trying to eat people, or, a floating city, or, on a Skydwarf ship, or some of that big stuff that we see now. And
so just grittier and smaller in his own mind, or old-fashioned might be a way of...
Yeah, exactly. So all those reasons, I think, contribute to why I still feel like he's got a foot in the old world, and I hope he continues to do so. I think that is going to be... It's a perspective you're not going to get from anybody else going forward, like as we read more and more stories. So, all right. And we did get some questions from chat. This time I did remember to ask on Twitter. And so our follower at Wake of Godzilla asks, what are your hopes for this young dwarfling now that he's back and kicking in the mortal realms? He's not young. Get out of here. Wake. And then who would you like to see him face off with now? And then he has another question I'll ask in a second. But what do you want to see from Gotrek moving forward? Just additional insert word slayers, like just him, like Godbeast Slayer and Pantheon Slayer, and
I think Davey did a great job for me in terms of bringing Superman into the conversation. The least exciting things Superman deals with are the things he deals with his fists, and so not seeing like a big battle, there does need. I'm sure at some point he needs to like punctuate a story with a fight.
Like punctuate.
So I think to try and put it to words would probably make it feel less so. So keeping it his true power kind of never seen is probably a good thing. So what I mean though is that I think him wrestling with things have to be probably more interesting if they are social or emotional or something to that effect, or where he is making it so that others can be better.
Sure. Like for me, it'd be the opportunity for him to interact with other pivotal people, like interact with Grungni or interact with the White Dwarf or something like that.
Sure.
These
Like,
travelers
piece together what has happened or
sure. Yeah.
revisit.
Well, and I'm sorry to keep making the Hamilcar reference, but like it'd be fun, like you say,
You're
for him to
forgiven.
introduce, him to see other people that we know through his lens, because like, he could sort of, what's the phrase, to take the piss out of something, like come at it from a irreverent perspective. Some of these like characters that maybe we've placed on pedestals, and take him down a peg, especially considering how powerful he is. He literally can, like, in a sense, talk down to them, because considering how powerful he is.
Him and Hamilcar meet and have the freeze frame jumping high five.
Yeah.
Are we going to have him in front of a bunch of portals saying Stormcast Assemble?
I can only hope. On your left, Gotrek. The things I want to see, I want him to gain things that he values in the mortal realms, so that they're under threat. Like he could, there's a chance he could lose them, basically. Especially, I think, with like Thanquol, like scheming behind the scenes. The only way you're going to get at Gotrek is if you start taking things away from him that like he treasures. And so for that to happen, he needs to gain things that he treasures in the mortal realms, and then run the risk of losing them. I think that's a clear way to write interesting stories for our dude. And then he being Wake Godzilla on Twitter asked, why was Brian Blessed so perfect for this role? First of all, I'll ask if you agree with that statement that he's perfect.
I didn't know him from much stuff, so
I don't either. Actually, we are so American,
right? But
Paul is having an aneurysm right now.
Yeah, I feel like he's maybe similarly, he's a classic talent that has probably been a part of a lot of classic stories and audio dramas and stuff, and so there's probably like he's a voice of an era. And so bringing that to this, like he's not the most modern, like new kid on the block, voice talent, whatever. So there's an element of that seasonedness that comes across in this, that he's been around, he knows how to voice things. He's got almost like, for us, it would, I guess for us, what's his name?
You don't know me.
James Earl Jones has a gravitas because of what he's been in, because of what he's done. There's a respected, you hear his voice, there's so many feelings and emotions in that. So I think he's probably got enough weight as an actor to bring that to this character who's supposed to be, thousands of years old and been through chaos. Like,
did you just call Brian Blessed old?
I didn't.
How many times you said that? Did you guys listen to the little bonus audio track where he gives a little interview?
Nope.
That guy's been around the block. He's not a new kid on the block. He's been around the block a couple times. High adventure, that fella. But I think I can only come at it from a like sound perspective, or like a feeling or an effect that he I don't have as much weight or history behind him as I think some people do. But now that I've heard him as Gotrek, like I'm always going to hear Gotrek in that voice. So hopefully he voices them and him into the future for foreseeable future. He's already got the other audio drama. He did that one too. But it's now cemented in my head. I think that it was very convincing. I think I mentioned before that it was a little over the top, but just like the right amount of over the top for this character. I think his performance was great. Cool. All right, that's the end of our listener questions. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we go and get the heck out of here?
I feel like I've talked about things that I don't actually know. So I probably shouldn't say any more. I'll just make up more stuff.
There's some good tap dancing there on what Brian Blessed brought to it. I one thing that we didn't mention that I thought we learned was pretty interesting. It looked into the Fire Slayers as mercenaries. Like there was a whole thing about why the Order of Azir was trying to get this rune. It was like because they were sitting on the fence. They said, well, they hadn't committed to the fight, and the Fire Slayers is saying, well, Sigmar knows where to find us, and pretty sure that dude's rich, so if he can pay, he knows exactly how to get our help. And so it seemed like the Order of Azir had some sort of like black ops thing to try and tip the balance and get the Unbarak Lodge Unbak Lodge to commit to the fight one way or the other.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was that was cool because they've recently we've seen a number of times that they can act as these mercenary things or as this mercenary element. So it was cool to see how that plays out politically a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's part of the reason he takes it out so hard on Broder. That work for Chaos.
But I hearken him back to the perspective of the Fire Slayers and how they sort of look at the world around them. There's a fun little exchange between Broder and Jordan where they're talking about Stormcast and Broder's like, well, I believe that guy was Vandus Hammerhand. He led the first battles in what the Azir insist on calling the Realm Gate Wars, as if the Umbach Lodge never lifted an axe throughout the centuries they spent locked away in their precious realm. Jordan says, if he hadn't, then every realm would now be overrun by chaos. Broder says, so they like to tell us.
Yeah.
So I love the every time the sort of the impressions, the opinions of the folks who were left behind, basically the Left Behind series.
All right, Kirk Cameron.
I know. When they get to chime in and put their little digs towards Sigmar, I love it. I want every book to have one.
It's a lot of this. Punching at the sky.
Punching at the sky. Yelling at clouds. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we scoot? Cool. Eric, roll us out.
It's time for our reforging. But Sigmar willing, we'll be back soon. Like, subscribe, share, or leave a review. Join us on Discord. Drop a tip on our Patreon. Anything you can do will spread the word of Sigmar farther than we can do it on our own. Chat with us anytime about your thoughts on Twitter @The Mortal Realms. Davey?
I'm at @red_Zeke, or you can get us at WTHcast.
Aaron?
I'm at Dos Asos.
And I'm at StoneMonk Gamer. You can find all our Mortal Realms shows and content at themortalrealms.com. And Millennia. Malineth. Gosh,
sorry, we just met her.
This should have been my intro. What did Gotrek say when he came out of the realms? Oh, no oath. No, never mind.
What? I don't get it.
Oath, no.
Explain it.
Oath, no.
Oh,
like, oh no.
All right, better, closer.
That's better, closer, warmer. That's it. Told you to do the bendy thing. All right.
Grandpa Gurnison.